All right, I'd like to call our meeting to order. Roll call. I believe all members of council are present and take this opportunity to welcome everyone to our meeting. Also welcome those who are streaming from the comfort of your home. So with that, members of council, we had nothing to report in terms of a closed meeting this evening. And as we approach a moment of silence and so forth, as we approach the Christmas season and so forth, we all know the difficulties out there, and certainly in our community and the province, the country, and certainly the world. Remember those in particular from the Ukraine who are still under tremendous I guess, force in terms of being under siege by an enemy that really does not see them to be fit to be worthy. And so I think it's our duties as well to keep them in our thoughts and hopefully that struggle will come to an end soon, and so that those good folks from the Ukraine will certainly have an opportunity to start rebuilding. And so let's keep them in our thoughts as we move into the Christmas season, and remember that how fortunate we are to be living in probably the best country. No, it is the best country in the world, bar none. And we never have experienced anything of that on our soil. Hopefully we never do, and so forth. So let's keep them in our thoughts. So let's take a moment just to reflect on it. Now, please stand for the national anthem.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
All right, we've done the land acknowledgement at our previous meeting, and so I'll move right into any disclosure of pecuniary interest on the agenda as presented to you this evening. Hearing none, then we'll have that duly noted. Then we'll move on to the minutes of the regular council meeting of November 22nd. Special council meeting, October 27th, 2022, Human Resources Strategy and Asset Management Plan. The training council meeting, November 22nd, 2022, Cybersecurity Awareness. And our special council meeting of November 29th, 2022, Council Orientation. I have a motion that they be adopted. Deputy Mayor Becchetti, Councilor Houston. On those minutes, any errors or omissions? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. We do have supplementary agenda adoption requirements this evening. Councilor Houston moves, and do have support. Councilor Higginson. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. So we'll move directly into delegations, members of council, and with us this evening, we have the Capstone Infrastructure. And if I may ask council's indulgence to bring report DS 2022-49 forward before the delegation speaks. Thank you. Councilor Tonio moves, supported by Councilor Dorner. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. And Lauren McLeod, Development Manager of Capstone. So welcome this evening to our council meeting.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us. Also on the line, I have Andrea Kousel, our VP of Development at Capstone, and Nick Collard, who is our Project Associate at Capstone Infrastructure as well. Thank you very much. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak tonight during your meeting. We appreciate it. If you'd like to go on to the next slide. So in this presentation, I'm just going to go over a little bit about our company, Capstone Infrastructure, a little bit about the ISO RFP procurement that we're looking to bid into, and then I'll touch a bit on battery projects in general, the project we're proposing in your area, some local benefits that you'll see from that project if it is fulfilled, and then also what we're asking of you tonight, the municipal support resolution. Next slide, please. So Capstone is a Toronto-based independent power producer, and we were founded in 2004. We develop, own, and operate our projects. There are about 30 facilities that are about 776 megawatts, and they include hydro, wind, solar, biomass, and natural gas cogen plants. Currently, we have about 140 employees across North America, and we've been a major player in the Ontario renewable energy market since 2005, with a total of 278 megawatts of solar and wind operating facilities, which is 17 solar and wind operating facilities. And next slide. So the need for the ISO capacity procurement. So Ontario's entering into a period of emerging electricity and system needs, and it's driven by the increasing demand that we're expecting, the retirement of the Pickering nuclear plant, and then the refurbishment of other nuclear generating units, as well as expiring contracts for existing facilities. The Independent Electric System Operator, ISO, has identified areas of Ontario with the greatest need for additional capacity, and that's based on Ontario's needs and load growth that's expected in the upcoming years. So in the near term, the ISO is looking to procure more than 4,000 megawatts of capacity through the expedited and the long-term RFPs. The expedited long-term RFP is focused on 1,500 megawatts, of which 900 megawatts will be focused on battery storage. And next slide, please. So a bit about the ISO RFP rules and timing. So the draft expedited and the LT1 RFP set out some mandatory criteria and some rated criteria. So this is optional scoring criteria that helps ISO prioritize the bids a little bit better. So among the mandatory criteria, sites are evaluated on a pass-fail basis. So things that we're being assessed on are whether or not we are a qualified applicant, whether or not our proposed project has the ability to deliver continuous electricity, the deliverability test results from the assessment that ISO completed at the end of November, and then the proposal's ability to meet the submission criteria in general. And then among the rated criteria, sites are being evaluated on the following. So things such as the location being within the priority zones that ISO identified, our ability for duration of service, Indigenous community participation, and then local governing body support resolution, which is what we're asking of you today. So the municipal support will be critical in our proposal prioritization for projects. Given the competitiveness of this RFP process, we're anticipating that the winning project will need to secure these rated criteria points to be successful. And then at the bottom of the screen there, you'll just see a little bit of a summary for some high-level dates for the RFP process that have occurred and are coming up in the future. And next slide, please. So a bit about a BESS project. So unlike wind and solar projects, battery energy storage systems, which are commonly referred to as BESS, have a condensed footprint. So with a low profile as well, they're requiring only about 10 acres for every 200 megawatts of capacity. BESS projects are also remotely monitored 24/7 and operated, which gives us the ability to have a lower impact on the community during operations period. And then in the bottom picture there, you can kind of just see a battery component and how it's integrated together. So you can kind of think of the battery itself like the battery within your smartphone. So it's a lithium-ion battery cell that's stacked within the battery modules, which then gets stacked in the battery racks. And that's what you'll see in the battery containers, kind of like the CCAN containers on the project site. And next slide, please. So this is what we're proposing in the town of Tecumseh. So we're looking to develop a battery storage project, and it would be up to 200 megawatts on land that's currently zoned agricultural. And then the parcel, you can see it in the bottom here. It's just north of Highway 3 and then just south of County Road 46. So we're in discussions with a landowner for the lease of their lands for this project siting. And this specific location is ideal based off the fact that the 230 kV transmission system owned by Hydro One is in close proximity to the parcel. Next slide, please. So some key considerations for the proposed area of interest. So the ISO West region, including Tecumseh, of course, was identified as a preferred area by ISO with the strong preference for the purpose of these procurements. So the property contains a transmission line that has been identified as an ISO preferred circuit as well. And this coincides with the identified need in the region for energy storage resources and is valued at the maximum number of RFP points, as I'd mentioned earlier. So the property was selected as it presents ample opportunity for the project to be sited near the north side of the parcel itself, which is a good distance away from houses and other receptors. And then this will help to reduce visual and noise impacts from the project itself. Also, the property was selected as it's fairly unencumbered by environmental constraints and features. So this should reduce limitations to it being permitted while having less of an impact on the natural environment itself. And next slide, please. So some benefits that come along with the battery storage project. So some short-term benefits would be things such as construction work, which we locally source whenever possible for short-term employment within the community during construction. And then also fees coming to the town, such as permit fees and other payments that would be made through the development process. And then secondary support services would be needed as well. And these would be things such as housing, food, site maintenance, et cetera. And that would be especially during construction, but also during development and operations as well. And then some long-term benefits would be the long-term tax benefits for 20 plus years. So 20 plus an additional potential 10 years there. And then the possibility of long-term jobs would be required for site management and some potential continued maintenance of the site. And then finally, BESS will contribute to a safe and reliable electrical grid. And next slide, please. So what we're asking for from you today, as you're aware, is the municipal support resolution. So we're requesting this resolution to support the project in obtaining the rated criteria points in the ISO procurement. And that submission goes through in February of 2023. So what it means to provide us with this support resolution today, it'll indicate support for continued development work between the town of Tecumseh and Capstone Infrastructure. And the competitiveness of Capstone's bid for a proposed battery energy storage system will be enhanced when ISO is assessing. This municipal support resolution would not provide any guarantees other than the agreement to continue to work together on the development of the battery storage project, but it's not guaranteeing us any permits would be given by the town of Tecumseh. So finally, like I said, we're just looking to get approval on the municipal support resolution and move forwards with that agreement with you today. And next slide, please. Here is my contact details, my email address and phone number. If anyone has any comments or questions at any time after this meeting or after that as well, always feel free to reach out and I'd be happy to get you guys answers to anything.
Okay, well, I don't know if there's anything else, Mr. Hillman, you want to add prior, but I do have some comments and certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, what I could do, Mr. Mayor, is just give a very high level review of the report. Pardon me. So a lot of the material has been covered by the presentation. I think what I'll focus on is just the notion of, in the context of municipal decision making, what would guide us in making a recommendation to council. So when we go to page 4 of the report that administration has put together, we really focus on official plan policy. And you'll see that, as has been noted in the presentation, the proposal is for this site to be somewhere in an area that's within an agricultural designation in the official plan and zoning agricultural. And the official plan actually has some principles that help guide us and council in making these types of decisions. And there's some planning principles that include the encouragement of energy efficient designs in the adoption and use of alternative renewable energy sources. There's a planning principle which establishes that the town shall address climate change implications, both mitigation and adaptation, in reviewing development proposals and public sector initiatives. And finally, we have a section in the official plan now that relates to energy conservation, climate change, and air quality. And it establishes the town shall encourage energy generation and renewable sources. So there's a general underlying thrust in the OP to support these types of initiatives. The official plan does contain policies in section 3.5 and 3.7 that speak to electric power facilities and utilities and telecommunications. And really the nature of that policy is to indicate that these types of facilities are suitable in all land use designations in the official plan. There is more specific wording, but what it doesn't touch upon are battery storage facilities. And really that's just an unfortunate circumstance where the official plan language wasn't quite advanced enough to capture this imminent use. So if this were to proceed beyond this stage today, an official plan amendment would be required, as would a rezoning. But the policy section really speaks to the logic of how these facilities are intended to be located in all areas of the municipality. So having said that, if an application for official plan or rezoning were to come forward, it would follow the normal procedures set out in the Planning Act, including a public meeting component and stakeholder engagement, so that those issues that might be out in the community could be brought forward in front of council for as part of the decision making. We really wanted to focus that, as has been stated in the PowerPoint, any municipal support this evening is really in relation to this IESO procurement process, and that really in no way fetters the decision of council as it relates to planning decisions that may happen in the future. We think that's very important to acknowledge. So there is a recommendation, Mr. Mayor, for council to consider at the appropriate time that this report be received by council, and that we do recommend that council support the development, construction, operation of the long-term reliability project by Capstone. In the town of Tecumseh, more specifically referenced as the South Shore Battery Electric Storage System project, for a maximum capacity of 200 megawatts. And further, that it be acknowledged the support shall have the sole purpose of enabling Capstone to receive rated criteria points in the procurement process. And it does not supersede any other applicable permits or approvals that might be required. And happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Hillman, and certainly to the delegation. Couldn't be better timing. In particular with the interests of, we got our battery plant that's right at our doorstep, and a lot of supply chain coming. In the delegation had commented about the closure of and the shutting down of Pickering and many others. And so as the supply becomes a little bit shorter and the demand becomes a little bit higher, there's certainly some vulnerability in terms of bringing investment certainly into the region. So the timing couldn't be better. It's clean energy, it's battery storage, and there's a lot of benefits from it, anywhere from protecting the peak demand. And as we all know, with the supply issue, this battery supply can certainly mitigate a lot of the peak load demand, and that is going to be required, for at least the next 3 to 4 years until a lot of the transmission lines are put in. And I think this is a great opportunity, and then it sends a sense of comfort to certainly new investment that potentially coming into the region, that the power supply will be stable. And this is what it does, because in particular in the high peak demands, what it does is basically balances the power factor as we the demand, especially in the summertime, in the peak times. So this would add into certainly into the system for that. And so I would certainly recommend to members of council that we support the Capstone's bid. This is something that the ISO is very supportive of, and as well as the OEB. And these are measures that can be utilized to give us an ability to stabilize certainly the requirement for power supply, especially in the very near future. And it's clean. And as you can see, it's only 200 megawatts, only about 10 acres of land. And it's right in the zone of the 230 kVA line. So I would surmise that council support the recommendation. Go ahead, Mr. Dorner.
Sorry, I just agree with you like on that completely, that this is good for Tecumseh and it's good for like the entire area.
Go ahead, Councillor Houston.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'll echo your comments. I think it's an exciting period. If we think back 5-10 years ago, battery storage, something like this, certainly, not something that we would have thought of, and to have something like this in the backyard in the area, it's exciting. And with everything we have going on, we certainly know that what the demand for power will be. My only question, in recognizing that it is agricultural land and we will need to amend the OP, I'm wondering from maybe the ministry level, and I heard Minister Smith on the radio today talking about this, and also SMRs and all things energy. But I'm wondering, would these require amendments to the OP, or will they possibly come with zoning orders that to allow these types of projects? I don't know, because and one thing I will just mention is it is on prime agricultural land, and it's something that we will need to maintain. But I realize a project like this, finite area that these can be located in, and those power lines are where they are, and they need to be located there. So I just wonder, just with the zoning process to allow it.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, perhaps I'll start, and the CAO may jump in here. So what I would envision is that the official plan would be amended to really incorporate in the sections I was referring to allow a permissive approach to clearly establish that battery storage is intended to be permitted on all land use designations, including agricultural. Keep in mind what the OP is currently saying is transmission lines, other utility features are already permitted. It does break it out a bit. It's just not clear enough that it allows battery storage. So it would really be an official plan amendment just setting that stage. The plan has a high regard for protection of prime agricultural lands, but it balances that against these very unique circumstances where your utility corridors and your utility infrastructure can't necessarily be anywhere else, or the facilities wouldn't function properly. So that would be the intent of the OP. The zoning would probably be similar in nature, because we do have a section in the zoning that speaks to the allowance for, it's very similar. Utilities and these types of things have to be allowed in all areas because it's the nature of where those things need to be. And so if it weren't this application, it's almost a housekeeping matter that we bring forward, and it would be dealt with that way. So that's our understanding how most municipalities are dealing with it.
Okay, go ahead, but no, you go ahead.
Great answer, Brian, through the mayor to council. It is a housekeeping matter, as Brian has indicated, you can initiate that anytime. It's your OP. It doesn't have to be application specific. And if it's council's wish to do this in preparation, you're at liberty to initiate that official plan amendment at any time.
And I just want to add just another piece to it as well, is that roughly 6 months ago or so, the ISO did initiate dialogue, and they wanted the municipal input in terms of what their power requirements were for the regions and so forth. I know Essex Power on our benefit, and that did relay a lot of that information and so forth. And so without, prejudicing the ISO, it's basically they're doing this to you, a blessing in terms, because this will offset a lot of the huge investments that are yet to come from certainly Hydro One. And so this is kind of the build up to where the regions got together, the municipalities said, this is our power requirements that we're going to need next year, 5 years and 10 years down the road. And so now you're seeing battery storage facilities and so forth now being complementary to help the municipalities that are now especially in southwestern Ontario, which is in the greatest need of more transmission, because this is where the big investments are coming. Go ahead, Councillor Higginson.
Did you have a supplementary before I go?
Oh, sorry.
No, I know.
Any
that's it. No,
supplementary?
yeah, supplementary, just when we are doing that amendment, because SMRs were a discussion as well. I don't know if that is something currently allowable, or we would have to make another plan, but I'm just thinking, is that something we should put the language in as well if we're going to amend the OP? So just a thought.
Go ahead.
If I could,
Yep.
through the mayor to council, if Councillor Houston is interested in doing a notice of motion for initiating a housekeeping amendment, we'd be happy to assist in formulating that so that it covers all the bases.
So I'll call upon you, Councillor Houston, at the back end of the meeting, at the tail end, and under notice of motions, and we'll deal with that particular issue. Yep.
Thanks very much. And through you, just for my own knowledge on this as new kid, and this may be to the proponent, maybe to Mr. Hillman. I'm wondering what I can surmise, but I'm wondering if you can give me an understanding of what the advantage of giving these rated criteria points is, and whether we're kind of legally within our bounds to do so, and what our obligations are legally to be able to apply these rated criteria points to one proponent, or how that may kind of impact us in the future.
Lauren, I believe it's Lauren.
Yep.
I'm gonna defer to you. I certainly can have, I've got my ideas on it, but certainly I'll defer to you.
Yeah, so it is up to the proponent if they want to go forwards to the municipality that they're looking to construct in, if they want to get this MSR or rated criteria points as part of their bid when they submit. You don't have to get it, but of course it does give the bidder an advantage that we would get additional points above and beyond the necessary or the required points that essentially were the pass fails. So by giving us this additional rated criteria that would go into our bid total, it gives us a higher advantage of actually being selected as a project that can build on the line. So in November, we did submit a deliverability test to ISO, and they assessed the projects that we're looking to bid in and connect to this line. So we were approved that we would be able to construct up to 200 megawatts, but it is competing against other projects. So if another project potentially was to come in and have the rated criteria points in a different potentially like location, obviously it wouldn't be exactly the same spot, but connecting to the same line, they might get the approval ahead of us. So it's advantages like that that kind of gives us the leg up if we get the additional rated criteria points, because ISO does want to know that we have your support in moving forwards with the discussions, to understand that it would be a viable project to essentially continue development discussions on. Hopefully that answered your question.
Go ahead, Mr. Hillman.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and this might be helpful just to understand a scale of reference as to what do these points mean. So our understanding is that there are a range of points that are available. And I'll just go through them very quickly. It's very short. Location, you get 4 points if you're west of Chatham. So that would qualify. 3 points are available if you can provide a duration greater than 12 hours, 1 point if it's between 6 and 8 hours. So point of reference there. If the municipality supports is 3 points, and Indigenous community participation, there's between 3 and 1 points available depending on the nature of that. So, that helps you understand that about 25% of the points can be derived from a municipal support. And this concept is fairly common. And what we understand is it's a way of the province and or any number arms and agencies related thereto to ensure that there's some level of engagement with the municipality. And so therefore they attach points to these types of processes.
It's basically quite similar to the Green Energy Act that was brought forward 10 years ago. If they were going through, if it was a project that was supported by Indigenous population or First Nation, you got X number more points, and so forth. So it with all of that, it accelerates the proponent's ability to be able to put a project forward.
Thanks for that. And I appreciate that, looking at this kind of like a handshake of a partnership. So I can appreciate that. Thanks for clarifying that for this new kid.
Okay. Okay, so you've got the report before you. If there's no further questions or comments, then I'll entertain a motion that we support the Capstone's proposition. Yeah, moved by Councilor Tonio, supported by Councilor Dorner. On the motion, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried unanimous. All right, Lauren, you're good to go.
Thank you so much. I appreciate everyone's time.
All right, take care.
You too.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Okay. Next is yes, the 2021 audited financial statements. Cynthia Swift, our partner from KPMG Municipal Auditors, to present, and I believe Tom, Mr. Kitsos, you'll get us started.
Thank you, Mr.
Your
Mayor.
moment to shine.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and members of council. So I'm pleased to welcome Cynthia Swift, partner at KPMG, lead of the audit team at KPMG, team members of Kevin, Macho, and Summer. Want to extend our thanks from the town to KPMG. We've had a working relationship with them for now, I think it's 8 or 9 years. So we definitely extend thanks to them for working on the audit with our team, and extend thanks primarily to Zora and Nick for their work on our end for the town. And with that, I think Cynthia will present the audit finding reports and our financial statements.
All right, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Tom. And good evening, Your Worship and members of council. So we have completed our audit of the December 31st, 2021 financial statements, and KPMG is in a position to issue our unmodified audit opinion subject to discussions with council today. We are still tracking down 3 legal letters, and we don't expect anything unusual to come through those, but we do have to get those back, and we're trying to track those down. Just some of the audit highlights as I talked through with the council orientation. Thank you. So this audit findings report is to help you as members of council discharge your responsibilities with the year-end financial reporting process. And I think I'll stick to the audit highlights for tonight. And if you have any questions, my contact information is in here. But as I mentioned, we are in a position to issue our unmodified audit opinion. Materiality, and this is a few pages in there. Materiality has been set at $710,000. So for the new members of council, that number is if there were any errors, either corrected or uncorrected in the financial statements that we were to find, we would have to consider if the financial statements are present fairly. So we had, the good news is that we had no corrected or uncorrected audit differences. So that just shows the detail that management does go through for their year-end reporting. As well, we go through a number of risk areas, and the most important risk is with respect to fraud risk from management override of controls. And with respect to that, we had no differences to note. We do our due diligence with respect to looking at any unusual significant transactions, any estimates, and journal entries to ensure that management really hasn't been able to change any of the estimates. And the two key estimates in the financial statements for the corporation of the town of Tecumseh would be with your employee future benefits, because there are a lot of assumptions in there with respect to interest rates, discount rates, salary escalation rates, and things like that. And as well, your amortization on your tangible capital assets. So your tangible capital assets are approximately $236 million. So that is a significant amount. And so we just want to make sure that there's no change in the way those are depreciated. And we had no issues with that. And then finally, I think I'd just like to highlight control deficiencies. It's our responsibility to let council know if there are any deficiencies. That would be with respect to internal controls or other deficiencies. And we had no deficiencies to note. So that's a really good thing. And then on the next slide, I believe, is with respect to the financial statement presentation. We always look to ensure that the corporation has identified all of the significant accounting policies, which they have, and were there any changes this year? There were none. It's just to note that management does prepare their financial statements, so that is good. Some municipalities, we have to help them with that. So management does a really good job, and we have the full cooperation from them with respect to completing their financial statements. So I think overall, my comments would be to council that, the corporation is in strong financial position. You have, total financial assets of 88 million, liabilities of $43 million, and accumulated surpluses of $281 million, of which there's approximately $60 million in reserve and reserve funds. So maybe with that, I'll stop and ask if there's any questions through you, Your Worship, for members of council.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Swift. Any questions or comments on the reports? None. Then all I can say is congratulations, Mr. Kitsos, and it's always nice to know that assets are going up, reserves are going up, and so obviously somebody's doing something right. So anyway, I just want to say thank you. If there's no questions, certainly to Ms. Swift and KPMG for auditing our corporation, but certainly, Tom, I want to say congratulations to you and your team, and for once again, I can understand why we get recognized every year in the award that we receive on our budget. I think it's 11 years, 13 or 12. I'm losing count now. 13 years consecutively, and so I want to extend my thanks to you, and on behalf of all of us and our previous council on doing a great job for the corporation. So I need a motion. No, not you, not you. Moved by Deputy Mayor McKetty and supported by Councilor Houston. The adoption of the report is presented. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Great, thanks.
And have a great evening.
You too. Thanks.
All right. We'll move on to the 2023 Police Services Budget Presentation on our CAO. And also our Secretary of the Police Services Board and Inspector Angela Ferguson of the Essex County OPP Detachment Commander.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Welcome.
We appreciate being here before you this evening. Normally, the Chair of the Police Services Board would present the proposed budget. However, we don't have one yet for the next term of office, although luckily we do have the appointees named. And so for this year, I will do the presentation, and Inspector Ferguson, being the new detachment commander for the Essex Detachment, is here with me this evening in the event that members of council have any questions or words of welcome for the new inspector. So we'll start. Next slide, please. So as has been mentioned, there is new policing legislation on the horizon. It actually was adopted in 2019, but still in the process of being promulgated. So the regulations are still under development, but the main changes that will affect local policing will be the detachment boards, as we discussed earlier tonight in the special council meeting, the continued implementation of the community safety and well-being plans, changes in what constitutes adequate and effective policing, and then there'll be no more OPP police service contracts under the new legislation. In terms of the Police Services Board, currently under the Police Services Act, which is still in full force and effect, Section 10 designates boards for the Ontario Provincial Police, and we are a Section 10 board. And we are responsible as a board to ensure the provision of adequate and effective police services for the town. The 5-member board is composed of Mayor McNamara, then another member of council, a community appointed member, and those were appointed earlier this evening, and notice will be given to those appointees in due course by the acting clerk, and then 2 members appointed by the province, Mr. Paul Sweet and Mr. Mark Gomes. Next slide, please. So here we are tonight, looking at the 2023 budget, and the budget drivers that we can comment on is that the 3-year contract that we have with the OPP expires at the end of 2023 or earlier when the new policing legislation comes into force. Estimated OPP wage adjustment has been included, although we note that the OPPA collective agreement expires at the end of this year, and so the next year will be a bargaining year. We look to maintain current service levels. We have had a small impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the board budget, which I'll get to in a couple of slides. And then there'll be the impact of transition to the OPP detachment board, which is unknown at this time. We just remind that CPI is also approximately 7% as of September. Next slide. So in terms of the contract services, we did contract with the OPP and extend out for a further 3 years, which ends at the end of next year. The cost allocation in the contract is based on base calls and also calls for service, roughly half and half. There is that wage increase, a modest wage increase within the budget estimate, but once again, that will be subject to collective bargaining next year. And the billing reconciliation for 2023 is actually in 2025. So there's always a bit of a lag in terms of our billing allocations. Next slide. In terms of comparative policing costs based on 2021, for the most part, although some municipalities didn't have their FIRs in, so they're still represented by their 2020 costs in that table. So we rank about third in the region in terms of the policing costs per capita and per household, and they constitute just over 10% of our budget. Next slide. The Crime Severity Index is an index that's prepared by Statistics Canada, and it shows us in middle of the pack in terms of our crime rate per 100,000 population, and reduced slightly between 2020 and 2021. Next slide. In terms of police service and related initiatives into 2023, we're looking to continue the implementation of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, Obviously, look at the regulatory environment associated with the new policing legislation and transition to our new detachment boards. We expect the ongoing administration of the mental health response teams. Those have been very successful in our area and a very good effort to respond to calls where people are in mental health crisis. And then we'll continue to collaborate as we have done successfully with between the town and the OPP on traffic enforcement and mitigation. Next slide. In terms of the Police Services Board, as I mentioned, the COVID-19 impact there, we had reduced budgets within across the board really for professional development during the height of the pandemic when there was restrictions on traveling and meeting in person, as many conferences and professional development opportunities removed to a remote delivery system. However, that is past us now, and we are returning the professional development of the Police Services Board back to its normal levels pre-pandemic, which represents an increase of about $3,500. So overall, the increase to the Police Services Board is just under $4,000 or 10.32% for a proposed budget of $42,366 in 2023 to operate our board. Next slide. In terms of the police service itself, on the revenue side, we're looking at around $138,000, which is an increase of just over 86%. And we've been successful in terms of the Ontario specific grants that the Solicitor General's office is now providing for a refund of officers' wages associated with those mental health response teams and through the Community Safety and Policing grant. So we have experienced, we'll experience the benefit of those Ontario specific grants. And also there's a reduction of $5,500 in court security and prisoner transport grant that we have to absorb. In terms of user charges, there's been a decrease of about $8,000 in alarm registrations due to revenue sharing with the Community Safety Department, our fire department, and then an increase of $5,000 in OPP reports and clearances to reflect activity level. So basically a net decrease of $3,000 there, and also a continued decrease in parking fines revenue to reflect actual activity. Next slide, please. Overall, the expenditures are anticipated to be $3.3 million, a decrease of $115,683 or roughly 3.33% over the prior year. And our gross expenditures in 2023 are also reflected above. So a decrease of $119,108 or 3.5%. Includes a small debit for 2021 year-end reconciliation, overall lower cost in both base service and calls for service, an allowance for policing of special events, and the estimated wage adjustment of 1% for 2023. Next slide. So that is the highlights of the proposed 2023 budget. We're here for questions. There were some additional slides in the presentation just to show some trends and activities. And if council has any questions on any of the presentation materials or those additional information slides, we're happy to take those now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Evans. Any questions or comments? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Marg and Angela, for coming this evening. I know we didn't formally meet prior to this, but it's nice to see you this evening with the police budget. The one slide that strikes out is the comparative policing costs. There's always discussion on, are we getting value for service and comparing to other municipalities, those that do municipal, even the ones in LaSalle, Amherstburg, and even Windsor. You look at the gap of per capita cost is huge. It's almost 3 times the amount. And so, in terms of getting, biggest bang for a buck in terms of the service we get from the police, yes, there's certain areas that we can improve. Speeding, that's always on everybody's mind, in terms of doing a better job with that, but that's everywhere. But if you look at the what we're getting in the programs and what's coming in the future, I'm really happy that we have the OPP. And I'm glad to continue in the future there. Thank you.
All right. Go ahead, Councillor Tonio.
I just want to welcome Inspector Ferguson. Welcome to Tecumseh. It's a great community to be part of, and we're looking forward to working with you and improving our relationships with our community about traffic. That's the biggest complaint. So I'm sure we can work with them and get a positive attitude where people feel safer. So looking forward to working with you.
All right, anything further? Just my comments. Again, we've met on a few occasions, and thank you for choosing Tecumseh, by the way, as your home and with your family, and certainly welcome to our community, not only as our commander, but as also as a resident and citizen. So welcome. And I've always been a big supporter of the Ontario Provincial Police, but because of what you bring to the table, and I can and many of us around the table, when we experience the huge Bondwell fire in 2014, the 2016 floods, 2017 floods, is how many boots on the ground that you can get here very quickly. And when you're talking about 200 to 300 officers within a very short period of time, that is huge. And in that regards, and what I like the most is you never send us a bill for that either. So that's kind of nice. And so forth. I think what we're to Councillor Tonio's piece in terms of the traffic issues and that, I mean, I think a key component that the community is really looking forward to now that kind of post-COVID and that is the community policing piece. I think it's very important. Would love to see the community officer back, and obviously you have to work with the schools and so forth on that. That's a bit of an issue. But I really believe that particular person, that officer, plays a huge role with our youth and our community. And that was a little bit that was missing, obviously, in the last few years. But with COVID, obviously, there were a lot of restrictions and mandates and so forth that was beyond any of our control in that. And now that we're experiencing growth and we have roughly 40 plus, I'm looking at Mr. Anthony, 40 plus parks in the area, and we have some large parks and so forth, and we've had some issues. But I think a little bit of a attention to the community policing piece, I think will go a long way in helping us. Outside of that, the OPP do tremendous work. We're probably one of the first community OPP policing. I think it's we go back to 1947 in municipal contracts with the OPP, and to the deputy mayor's point, when we look at the index, bang for the buck is certainly important to us, but obviously when you look at those numbers, it's been tremendous. And the other big piece that I want to say thank you to the OPP and especially Aurelia and certainly the ministry for listening to us when we talked about the missed dials and the cost to the municipalities, not only us, but throughout. You listen, and you've really made some huge change. And when you look at fees for call, and you look at the millions of dollars across the province, and that's all factored in every 4 to 5 years. And when you look at the contract, and especially when we're dealing with today with the high inflation rates and so forth, and then the OPP come in at 3.3% below from last year. So thank you. Pass it on to the Bureau, and we're certainly appreciative of that. And then looking forward to working with you closely and continue to protect our community. Please extend our thanks to the men and women that protect us on a daily basis. We only see the surface that much, and the officers do a lot of the stuff in the background. So thank you, and extend our thanks to the men and women that protect us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to everyone on council. It is an absolute pleasure to be here, especially residing in this community now, and I look forward to working with everyone.
Excellent. So Madam CA, we're looking for a motion to, at this stage, are we gonna
Just to receive, if you
To
could,
receive
your
the
worship,
report.
please.
Council Houston, Council Antonio, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience in waiting here. Okay. All right, Mr. Kitsos and Company. Mrs. Dedalt. So we're here, you're going to give us a draft business plan in our operating budget for the year 2023.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to start you off with the first few slides, and then we'll turn that over to the finance team here. So we're pleased to present and introduce the 2023 proposed budget, business plan and budget. Next slide, please. We'll provide an overview. I will provide an overview and then turn it over to the treasurer and deputy treasurer to go through the meat and potatoes of the presentation and conclude with the Q&A. Yes. So next slide, please. We are still working off of the 2019 to 2022 strategic priorities and strategic plan. So we just list them here on the slide to remind you that these are the ones that we fashion our business plans around and set our priorities in terms of the strategy and work plans in accordance with council's strategic priorities. So those are, of course, available on our website, and we will be starting the strategic planning for this term of office in Q1 of 2023. Next slide. So a number of these slides I'm going to just really blast through because this would have been the subject of council's recent orientation sessions in November. And so, you know, in the interest of time this evening and recognizing that we've got some time pressures, I won't spend a lot of time on this. You know, this is basically another reminder that we did do an organizational review in 2021. We still have some work to do on that, and the work continues. And in addition, we have implemented or in the process of implementing a number of corollary reviews that are related to the org review, people strategy, information technology services strategy, digital strategy, some business continuity, disaster recovery strategy, payroll, and clerk services are the ones that we're currently working on. Next slide. This organization chart you saw as part of your materials on October 29th and essentially lays out at a high level the functions of all the departments that are working hard to implement your strategic priorities. Next slide, please. So the next series of slides, as I mentioned, set out the objectives. You'll see these reflected in the business plan and the full business plan and budget that will be posted after this evening's presentation. So these won't come as any surprise. Many of these I spoke to in November in terms of the objectives of my office. And I'm just going to kind of rifle through the next set of slides here. So go ahead, Sue, next slide, please. Objectives of people and culture. So Director Michelle Bonici spoke to these in November in terms of the actual work that's coming out of the people strategy that she presented to council in October. Next slide, please. Legislative services and clerk. So here we are again speaking to the implementation of the clerk service delivery review, and lo and behold, later on this evening at the report section, we will be talking about the implementation of several of the recommendations of the consultant and asking for council's dispensation on those, completing records management, ongoing lottery license litigation, and some other very important work that the clerks and legislative services team will be undertaking in 2023. Next slide, please. Financial services also spoke to these highlights in their orientation materials, looking at the payroll service review, development charges, a background study one more time again. It seems like we all just got finished and here we go again. Asset management also on a continuous work plan there, and then conducting some department specific work to support the building operations review. Next slide. Technology and client services, as I mentioned, a number of service reviews that have already been undertaken and are now in the process of implementation. This is what we like to see. We don't want the things to be studied and then put on a shelf. We're very active in terms of making sure that they get implemented. And Sean and his team are busy working on a number of the overall corporate initiatives, as well as specific ways that they support each department in terms of the financial system upgrade, the HRIS, cloud permitting, digital radio upgrade for fire, etc. Carry on. Community safety, the fire chief set out a number of these parameters in his orientation discussion. We look forward to council's engagement on the fire master plan and the update on the Tecumseh emergency response plan, two very important documents for our community's safety and well-being. And next slide, please. Development services and public works and environment and engineering services. You'll see a heavy focus on the growth related objectives of council's strategic priorities as we get ready for implementing the growth in our new areas, the Tecumseh Hamlet and the Manning Road Secondary Plan area, as well as the community of Oldcastle. Included in the larger front is the completion of the comprehensive zoning bylaw. This evening, they're reporting out on the on-demand transit pilot project. And then they have a number of economic development initiatives on the horizon for next year, as well as implementing the building services operational review. Next slide, please. Community and rec services. I'm not going to steal Paul's thunder because he's going to present you with 3 capital reports tonight, and he's going to speak to a number of these initiatives. And he has been working hard and is a great partnership builder in the community to make sure that we have good community support for our development of our amenities. Next slide, please. And then rounding us out, Public Works and Engineering Services, as I mentioned, also contributing substantially to the growth initiatives and priorities of council. All projects aligned on that track, as well as cooperating with our county partners on projects that are ongoing in the County Road 42 and 43 area, and fulfilling the requirements of the funding partnerships that we have secured with the federal government for the storm sewer improvements in the north end of town, as well as Centennial and Woodbridge water main replacements. And next slide. And with that, I will turn it over to 2023 draft business plan. It wasn't quite 50 words, Mr. Mayor, but I think I only took about 3 minutes.
I think you did it in 49.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark.
Nice backdrop.
So before I start, I'd like to, I think this is Vanessa's first council meeting, I believe. So I'll introduce Vanessa Diddle to council, our new deputy treasurer and manager revenue. So she'll be participating in this presentation with me. And I'd also like to extend thanks to our CAO directors, managers for all their work and time that goes into this exercise. So it is a lengthy exercise. I will say that everyone participates and they put their work into the budget itself and also into the document. So we couldn't do it without their efforts. And of course, extend thanks to our accounting team, and in particular, Vanessa, Nick, Zora, and Kim, who put in a lot of time into this product. So with that said, if we go to the next slide, the business plan and budget will take the format as it has in the last several years. So it's an electronic document. It has the same sections you've seen the past several years. So it starts with a transmittal, an executive summary. That number 3 there, the budget reconciliation. So that's a required piece that we have to have done in place to adopt the budget. That one is not in the booklet that you'll see tomorrow, but it will be received as an addendum in about a week's time. Outside of that, so it's basically they're basically the same setup as we've had the past several years. Next slide, please. So with that, I'm going to turn the next several slides over to Vanessa.
Thank you, Tom. So this slide here is a quick visual representation of the budget process. So from beginning to end, it's normally around a 3-month process from generally mid-September going into tabling and deliberations in November, and then an adoption planned in December. Now, this year, given that it was an election year, we moved deliberations and adoption of the budget into the new year. So one thing that's kind of a beneficial thing to note here is that when town staff initially draft the budget, so the blue portion here, we came up with a 5.4% net growth, net of growth increase. And then after which we have the review with the CAO and various other discussions where we were able to find cost savings, cost deferrals, additional revenue resources, and made determinations on what one-time expenses we could fund through transfer from reserves. So after that, we were able to come to a 4.4% net of growth increase. We have deliberations planned for January 17th, 19th as well, if needed, and then an opportunity for adoption January 24th. Next slide, please. So the 2023 proposed budget requires a municipal general tax levy of 27.6 million. That's about 1.5 million or 5.6% increase from last year, 2022's approved tax levy. If we factor in the assessment growth that we are anticipating for next year, the proposed budget is suggesting a 4.4% increase to the tax rate from last year. So this means that the average residential property, which is assessed at 250,000, will see an annual increase of $86 to the municipal portion of the tax levy. So the table here, we're trying to break down the components that make up this increase. The biggest driver here is inflationary or non-controllable items, making up 1.6 of that 4.4 number, followed by our contributions to capital life cycles, 1.5, and operations at 1.3. And we'll dive deeper into each one of these items throughout the presentation. On a consolidated basis, the consolidated levy we're estimating at 4% increase. Right now, this is an estimate because we do not have the county and the education rates at this time. Our assumptions here are assuming no changes to the education levy. However, we are anticipating a 4.5% increase for the county. So again, looking at a residential property that's assessed at 250, that would mean $142 increase annually on property taxes. 86 of that would be the municipal portion, the remainder driven by the county rate. And that last bullet there is just, again, due to the pandemic, the Ontario government has postponed the 2022 assessment update. So they've indicated that property assessments for 2023's property tax year will continue to be based on the fully phased in January 1, 2016 values. So essentially, if you had a property and you didn't make any changes, improvements or otherwise to it, your 2023 assessed value will be the same as last year's 2022. Next slide. So the budget numbers that we just talked about are really looking 1 year forward to 2023. However, it is important that we extend our forecasting beyond 1 year. It's important because it helps us plan for the future, keep us focused on the long-term goals and objectives of council, and helps us decide really where and how we should be spending our money. It shows us the impact today, but also the impact on our levies down the road. So this is a 5-year projection of our tax levy increases. It includes anything that was known or very likely to occur, as well as estimates for inflationary items. The projection is broken down into 3 areas. We have operating, capital, and assessment growth. And just for reference, a 1% here can translate to about $250,000. So to summarize the items here, the 3 buckets, From an operating standpoint, service level and payroll are our two big hitters for the next 2 years. The key drivers there are really the implementation of phase 2 of the org review, as well as benefits. And so we're seeing some significant increases in healthcare benefits, as well as just general increases in statutory benefit rates for CPP, EI, WSAB, et cetera. For capital contributions, this amount we're seeing here is significantly higher than 2022. The reason for that is because last year we did a temporary decrease in this allocation to help offset the cost of the organization review. So 2023 numbers here were really bringing us back to our original levels to help us achieve our capital goals. And then the assessment growth here are just offsetting some of these increases. Next slide. So while reviewing the 2023 budget booklet, you'll have an opportunity to see a lot of the key variables that are driving this year's budget. But here we just like to highlight a few. So we have total growth estimated within the budget of 330,000 in municipal tax revenue for the year. And that's made up of two numbers there. The first 180,000 is additional tax revenue, and then another 150 for supplemental tax. You'll, in reviewing the building financial statements, you'll see building permits increase significantly, 214,000. All of that we've transferred to reserves, so the net impact there is nil. And then you'll also notice a reduction in lottery license revenue as the bingo hall is moved to our neighboring municipality to Lakeshore here. Next slide. On the expenditure side, contributions to capital. So this includes increased allocations to our capital life cycle programs, including our new infrastructure levy. This budgetary increase represents about a third of the overall levy increase, and it's necessary to support the town's strategic priorities of sustainable infrastructure, smart growth, and building a community of health and wellness. So we'll discuss contributions to capital in further detail later. The next number here, 762,000 is payroll. I'm going to defer this to the next slide because we do go into more detail on what those key drivers are. We have a favorability here of 119, which the CAO referenced in the OPP discussions. Insurance, we have multiple discussions with our insurance brokers, and right now we're anticipating about a 15% increase over our last year's premiums. That's about a $40,000 increase. So we've offset a bit of that with transfers from reserves to bring us down to 25. For gasoline, so that's gas, diesel, natural gas. Although our consumptions are planned to be relatively flat, we are experiencing just significant price increases due to just economic factors that are simply out of our control. 96,000 for computer support and software. The key drivers here is 50,000 for a building permit software. We have 20,000 for Laserfiche, another 19 for Microsoft 360 for the organization wide. And then 97 for professional development. So although we do have a little bit of increase for staffing enhancements, majority of this is increases bringing us back to pre-COVID numbers. Next slide, please. All right, so this table shows some of the key drivers that are for payroll. We have 191,000 for building support. So this is for the deputy chief building officer and senior building inspector that was discussed at last council meeting. Got about 106,000 related to phase 2 of the organization review. 59 for technology and client services. We have a help desk support, receptionist, and co-op in customer service. People and Culture has requested a business partner, and they've offset some of that cost with reduction in student hours. Community and Rec is about 39,000. Most of that is just increased hours. And then we've got 310,000 here is other. And this really includes wages and benefits for everyone else. So that's like around 119 full-time equivalent from the org chart that we saw earlier with 4 different bargaining units. It also includes approximately 30% increase in health benefits for things from like Green Shield, around 4% increase in life insurance and AD&D, long-term disability we're seeing go up about 8%. And then again, just general increases with statutory benefits, EI, CPP, and whatnot. Next slide. So there are a couple items that could impact the municipal levy that we haven't included in our provisions within the budget at this time. That includes the organic recycling, so your green box and compost that we know is coming down the line at some point. Regional garbage and collection, and a potential cost related to the ongoing lottery license litigation. Next slide. So no significant changes here from the previous years. Property taxation continues to be around the 81% of total revenue. User charges and investment income is around 5-6%. So as you can see, we have very limited ability for the town to generate income outside of taxation. Next slide. So this table itemizes the levy into the 3 authorities, so municipal, county, and education, and showing the impact for each on a property assessed at 250,000. So as we discussed with the proposed 2023 budget, the average residential property for 250,000 would pay $142 in annual property taxes incremental to the previous year. 83 of which of that increase is driven from the municipal levy, the remaining 56 from the county. So overall, we're anticipating a 4% increase overall, or 3.97. And with that, I'll pass it off to Tom to discuss water and wastewater and capital items.
Before you move to that, to both Vanessa and I can give you an amended from the county. It's 3.8 now.
Good.
Okay.
Our mayor was the hero of the budget night, where he was able to shave a good chunk of money at the end to bring it to that 3.8. It was 4.5 earlier that evening. So
1.2 million.
yeah. He pulled a Lugano.
Hey, well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Vanessa. So with the next slide, please. This slide just shows our comparative tax levies with our neighbors in the county. And this is based off 2022 data. So you'll see Tecumseh is combined with property tax and water and wastewater rates. We're at the 2nd lowest level in the county for a property valued at 250,000 with 20 cubic meters of water consumption. Next slide, please. Okay, so next I'll speak to our rate supported services, which are water and wastewater. So water and wastewater services are based on a full cost recovery approach. So the town's rates are guided by water and wastewater rate studies that take into account operating and capital costs, as well as revenue and growth projections. The town's 2015 water and wastewater rate study guided rate increases for 2016 to the 2020 budget period. And that study addressed two main challenges: revenue shortfalls due to rate structure and sanitary sewer reserve fund deficit over a 10-year planning period horizon to keep annual resident cost increases reasonable. So the 2015 study was also designed to gradually shift the rate revenue mix from a 30-70 fixed variable ratio to 40-60 ratio over a 10-year period. So that would give us greater revenue predictability for reserve fund contributions. This study was due to be updated in 2020, however, was postponed due to the pandemic. In the interim, the town has used the 2015 study to guide rate increases for budget years 2021 and 2022. And this is a reasonable approach, seeing as the 2015 study was covering a 10-year planning horizon. The study update is in progress, however, not yet complete, and will be presented to council in 2023 Q1, and it'll be titled the 2023 Water and Wastewater Rate Study. The 23 study, albeit in draft state, is expected to recommend similar or slightly higher rate increases than the 2015 study, mainly due to capital costs increasing at a much greater rate than the CPI. For 2023 budget purposes, administration has effectively used both the 2015 study and 2023 draft study to guide rate increases, which are similar to past years and calls for a 6% increase to fixed charges and 2% increase to variable charges for both water and wastewater. This increase to the average consumer amounts to about $38 increase per year, or 3.6% over 2022 rates. Combined rate revenue for 2023 is estimated to be about 11 million, with approximately 4.5 million of that transferred to reserve funds to support our capital works projects. Next slide, please. So we've got some key items here in the wastewater division. So these are mostly capital related. The first being with respect to sanitary sewer service extensions and the program in the south end of the town. So this program has been ongoing for several years and still has many years to go. The 2023 budget and Public Works 5-year capital plan will include continuation of the sanitary sewer extension program in what we refer to as the 8th concession sewer area in the Old Castle. A cost recovery bylaw is set to be created for 2023 that will allow for the town to collect the sanitary cost portion of these projects from benefiting landowners. There are multiple phases to this program, and it is expected that it'll take many years to complete. The next phases are the County Road 46, Webster, Laval, and Del Duca Drive extensions with construction planned for 2024. Also included are capital projects with respect to flood mitigation. So the town's sanitary sewer model update is expected to be completed in 2023. It is anticipated that this model update will recommend improvements to the system through capital projects estimated at around $35 million. With respect to operations, the town receives treatment services through the City of Windsor. Generally, annual rate increases have been close to CPI. However, we did experience an increase of about 15% for 2022. Overall, the town has seen improved operating costs following capital investments in past years intended to reduce rainwater inflow and infiltration into our sanitary system. Actual volumes treated are significantly lower than several years ago. Next slide, please. So on the water side, again here, key items identified are mostly capital related as well. So we have continued improvements to water main breaks through our anode program. So we're seeing annual counts of breaks of around 20 compared to 40 some years ago, and an overall 80% reduction since that project started. The town's so this is in part due to the anode program that has been in place for a few years, and also to the town's methodical approach to gradually replacing cast iron and ductile iron water mains. Also listed here is water main improvements associated with Essex County's capital projects. So there are two in particular that will impact the town in 2023, with construction to commence on County Road 42, 43, Phase 1, and County Road 19. So these are county road projects within town boundaries that will allow for the town to replace water mains while the roads are opened up. So although these county projects might tend to mess a bit with our our own project priority rankings and timetables, coordination with the county projects will enable both parties to achieve cost synergies and will reduce interruptions for travelers on these roadways. The water model update is due to be completed soon. So this update is a supplementary component to the town's water and wastewater master plan, which was recently completed in 2018 and will assist with a strategy for long-term service delivery. The town was successful in securing grant funding through the ISIP Green Stream 2 intake 2021 intake. So that we've referenced that here, and the project is the Centennial and Woodbridge project that is estimated at $3.5 million with grant funding of up to 73%. This program targets an area in town that has historically been susceptible to water main breaks. On the operations side, the town purchases water in bulk from the city of Windsor based on a 50-year agreement. The agreement calls for annual rate increases equal to CPI. This has produced minimal increases for many years. However, we did experience a 5% increase this past year. Next slide. So this slide summarizes our capital program and funding strategy. So the town's capital program and funding strategy includes a life cycle program consisting of several reserves dedicated for specific asset types. This program was initiated in 2005 and has been very successful for the town for replacement of existing assets. The 2023 budget proposes a $250,000 increase to the annual allocation, bringing it to $8.9 million. Our annual requirement based on various studies is about $9.5 million. The town initiated a new infrastructure levy in 2015. So this is a capital reserve intended to accumulate funds in support of new and enhanced infrastructure projects. The 2023 budget proposes a $200,000 increase to the annual allocation, bringing it to $1.95 million. Our annual target for this is $2.35 million, and that was based on our 2019 development charge background study and added provision for recreation amenities. The town also includes debt as a funding source, so we use debt strategically for long-lived assets. We do have a town policy that limits debt payments to 10% of our own revenues. Currently, our annual repayment limit, as it's referred to, is approximately 5%. So another significant source of funding is grant and partnership funding. So we do pursue all grant opportunities and have had considerable partnership interest in recent years. Lastly, we have listed here is Essex County capital programs. So as highlighted on the last slide, county projects and their timing can impact our project timeframes. Close contact with the county is essential to ensure asset integration opportunities are not lost. So typically, the town's budget process includes the operating budget, which we're tabling today, that includes funding allocations to capital reserves and reserve funds. However, does not seek approval for specific capital projects. Council approval for specific capital projects is generally sought following the operating budget process through department 5-year capital plans. 5-year capital plans that council will receive will be for the period 2023 to 2027. They will seek approval for 2023 projects and will identify likely order of recommended projects for the next 4 years. Earlier this year, council priority workshops were held through 2 special council meetings in March and May. The purpose of those workshops was to consider optional 5-year capital plan scenarios intended to shape and prioritize the 5-year capital plans for the community and recreation services and public works and engineering services departments. At those meetings, council adopted plans in principle that include significant investment and focus for community recreation amenities and infrastructure works that will promote development. At the March 29 meeting, specifically, the 5-year plan adopted in principle provided for the following capital projects. We have listed some here: Lacoste Ball Diamond Upgrade, Sportsplex components, Lakewood Park amenities, Southfield Park Splash Pad, Maidstone Recreation Center, Cattle Library renovations, and artificial turf fields. So at the May 5th special council meeting, the attention turned to Public Works and Environmental Services capital program. So competing priorities for consideration included development and growth, climate change and flood mitigation, Tecumseh Road Main Street, projects that have already been awarded grant funding, and coordination with county infrastructure projects. So this was a difficult task for council and administration and required prioritization of development areas. In the end, council's choice was to focus on development and growth opportunities in the Tecumseh Hamlet Secondary Planning Area and Old Castle Industrial and Business Park. The 5-year plan also includes several other major capital projects, such as the Scully and St. Mark's and PJ Cecile storm pump station replacements, County Road 42, 43, Phase 1 improvements, L'Esperance Via Rail improvements, and that's just to name a few. Next slide. So the 2023 proposed budget includes reference to capital projects that will likely be included in the 5-year capital plans that will be brought forward to council in the coming weeks, with the exception of recreation and communities, which we'll see later tonight. The proposed budget includes capital projects of roughly $40 million and contributing grant and partnership funding of about $9 million. Some of those projects, including estimated cost and contributing funding sources, are listed on this slide. So I won't go through the entire list, but it is impressive to see the number of projects that will receive supporting fund sources. And I do think I missed one here, Lakewood Park, Washerman Splash Pad. I do believe we're getting some partnership funding from the Optimist Club. So apologies there. So the $42 million is a considerable capital budget, considering the town's annual allocation to reserves is about 14 million. So that's exactly 3 times our annual allocation. So we also list here our current debt payments, so which amount to about $1.7 million, and that is paid through our reserves. Now we'll turn to our reserve strategy. So our reserve strategy includes funding from our life cycle and nil programs and allocations from water and wastewater rates in support of rate infrastructure. Ideally, funds are accumulated in advance of requirements, at least in part, to minimize debt and other source funding reliance. Added benefits of the reserve strategy is that it does allow financial flexibility to pursue grant opportunities where owner funding is required. Life cycle nil water and wastewater reserve funds have an estimated total of approximately $60 million at our 2022 year end. Of that 60 million, projects planned for 2023 are expected to require 20 million. Our infrastructure reserve used for funding new or enhanced infrastructure is expected to have a 2022 year-end value of approximately 13 million, of which you see here 5.8 million is anticipated to be used towards community and rec projects in 2023 alone. Next slide. So in the outlook years for 2024 through 2027, we'll see a continuation of the 5-year capital works plans developed in 2022 for rec and public works. Some pressures we do anticipate include annual expenditures of the plan are well above normal. So this does create some concern with respect to workload capacity and ability to deliver. Material and labor cost inflation. So that has been considerably higher than CPI the last year and a half or so. Construction industry capacity, so competition for construction resources has left recent tenders with few or no bids, and rising borrowing rates. Also, breaking tenders apart into multiple portions to address supply chain disruptions does create some more time and cost on our end. However, we do have some mitigating measures that the town can employ, and that's on the next slide. So we do have our financial strength, and our life cycle and reserve provides flexibility with respect to debt and interest rates. Grant and partnership opportunities exist and will be pursued. Our borrowing capacity exists with the town's ARL of about 5%. And there is the ability for motivated developers to finance infrastructure costs with future date recoveries. So the next slide. So in closing, the 2023 proposed budget incorporates council's adopted in principle capital works plans, continues implementation of the organization review, addresses growth demands on the building department, and includes modernization and efficiency initiatives. It advances on council and community priorities, and it proposes a fair value tax rate increase to property owners. And we have one last slide. So we have budget deliberations, as was mentioned earlier, set for January 17th at 4 p.m. With a second meeting for January 19th at 4 if needed, and potential budget approval on January 24th. The complete budget document will be posted to the town's website by the end of day tomorrow. So that's Wednesday, December 14th by 4:30. And I will send an email directly to councillors and the senior management team notifying them when the document has been posted. Thank you. And if there are any questions, we could take.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Kitsos and Ms. Dadalt. Any questions or comments at this stage? Go ahead, Councilor Houston.
Thank you through you to Tom and Vanessa, everybody who has put time into the budget. This document, and especially this time of year, right, I think is one of the most important things that we do here around the council table. And you make it very easy, right, to understand and comprehend the information, even for the residents, right? I think we put a fantastic platform out there for them in this presentation, really to understand what's driving the the budget. And I think this year it was new, and I'm just jumping back in the presentation, the way that we had cut out what the driver or what the specific drivers in the budget were, the key revenue items, right, and key expenditures, and what percent of that increase. I think that's fantastic, really simple and really easy for everyone to understand. So it's a great document. I'm looking forward to going through Big Brother, right, when we receive it, tomorrow. But thank you very much, and please pass that along to everyone. So thank you.
Yeah, I would suggest you lock yourself in a door in a room someplace. Certainly with the document, it's going to be certainly important reading over the holidays for sure. So it's not much that I could say tonight. Obviously, we got to go through, do our exercise, our due diligence and so forth. But again, just extend my thanks as well. I know you didn't do this over the weekend. You've been working at this since the summer and so forth. And I can imagine the stressors as well, dealing like this is just a weird year. I got to say it only in that regards because of the interest rates, the construction trades themselves, the shortages, the demand on supply. There's a whole host of things that are really compounding the difficulties in terms of, because again, the document is, you're trying to preview what's ahead the next 12 months. And it's almost like, if you do have a crystal ball, I'd like to know. I'd like to be able to look at it and to see, what the future holds as well. But there's a lot of factors that are compounding. It's not only new to us, and certainly in that regard. And but the one thing I want to say, this goes back to 2004, when we had very little reserves, newly amalgamated 4 years or 5 years into our corporation, and we went on a mission well ahead. We were 8 years before the ministry actually told us that you should look at an asset management program and a life cycling replacement reserves. We saw fit to do it in 2004. And I must say, we were, for some part, with the media and others, we were kind of ridiculed a little bit that we were, if you want a tax break in the community, you'll have to wait 10 years. I remember the headlines. As a matter of fact, I still got them on my desk. I kept those. And but the harsh reality is now, what I'm hearing from my peers out and our neighbors, they're coming in at some of them double what we are, double. And so it's we took a bit of medicine, 15 or almost 20 years now, to 18 years ago. And so I certainly want to thank and go back, with a lot of my past members of council And I think as well, going back to Luke Gagnon, and as serious as he was and managing, you learned under his tutelage, Tom, and maintain that movement, and certainly through our CAOs and so forth, we've been able to manage that and going forward. And thank goodness we did. Thank goodness we did. 60 million in reserves. You know, the treasurer just alluded to that, you know, even with all the harshness and everything else and the uncertainties of the budget, mitigating factors. This was, you know, who would have perceived down the road that we would have had COVID, that we would have had all of these issues and high interests, and that we, well, many around the table wouldn't remember in the late 70s and 80s, but I remember when mortgages were, if you got a mortgage at 13%, you thought you just won the lottery. And so here we are experiencing, you know, some real difficulties there. So kudos to administration, you know, for and for council for staying the course and saying this is important for us to do that. And I did mention to the CAO a while back, I am not one, I hate cutting capital, because all that does is punch it in the future. You punt it down the road and you pay again. And remember, and I said at the county last week, I said, when you do that, always remember the CPI, especially the construction price index. As long as I can remember being here doing budget, it's 7 to 10% every year. And so you punt that into the future, whatever you think you're saving now, it's going to cost you that much more in the future. And the other thing to remember too is that when you've seen the cost of living where it's at right now, and then, you know, they say that the interest rates will be maybe at the end of the third or maybe the fourth quarter of 23 into 24 is going to be at 2%. Well, I'm hoping it is, and they stabilize, but it's going to be a year and a half or 2 years for actually the cost of borrowing to kind of match that. But if you think that the price of what we're paying today is going to drop that amount, no, it's going to stabilize, and then the inflation rate will be that 2% above what you're paying now. So that's the important thing when we're sitting down next month in the area, is when we're thinking about it and so forth. As much as I hate tax increases and so forth, but the harsh reality is that the demand of services will not go down. It'll go up as it always does to maintain that. And there's a cost to that. And the capital piece, you know, we kind of figured this was going to go, the interest rates and that, when we sat down and did it, because they were telling us, you know, that the potential of those interest rates and so forth. So we need to keep that in mind as we certainly move forward. But if there are areas, obviously, I'm going to scrutinize it, Mr. Kitsos, very well over the next month and that. And I'm sure I'm going to either pop in your office or in the CAO's office to see where we can certainly manage it. But we need to continue, because we've got a lot of great projects that are here. But most importantly, we can't punt forward or in the future capital, because we're trying to balance out growth in our community, which is very important, because you can see it'd be nice to have a lot of new assessment come in to help balance those bigger increases as we move forward. The only way we're going to do that is we gotta ante up, make sure that the services are there for the folks to be able to, you know, we need to put the pipes in the ground, so to speak, and maybe there's ways of recovering that. So I said enough, but I just want to say thank you to administration, and we got a lot of work to do. It's more than a 39-page PowerPoint. Okay, the motion to receive, go ahead, motion to receive. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and Councillor Houston, support on the motion. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. Okay. All right, next is yeah, I might skip, I'm going a little too far here. Oh, Paul's. Yes. Not on, okay, Paul. Mr. Anthony. Oh.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
It's a long.
Okay, Mr. Anthony, could you come up to the delegation table, please? And yes, you're not going to the principal's office.
You don't need your computer for this.
You don't need the computer for this one. The automatic pilot, he's always like that. He's actually that's what I'm gonna miss, because I when we did the as we all know, this is Paul's probably his last meeting with us. And when we were doing the expansion, I was contemplating putting either a four-way stop or red light, in particular when you're coming between buildings, because when Paul was coming, you had to step aside because it was 100 miles an hour from one end to the other. So a stop sign would have been maybe a good thing, but I don't know if you would have blown stop sign anyway on the way. Listen, Paul, it's you know, there's always a time a career comes to an end, and here we are. This is your very last meeting, and it's an opportunity for us here, your peers, and certainly council, to take a moment to thank you for your years of service, your 13 years that you've given us here. Going back in time 13 years ago, I always remember this, and those who have been here will appreciate this, but if you recall, we used to have Parks Department and the maintenance of the parks. It was all under Public Works. No offense to our Public Works director. I remember getting a phone call from a very, very distraught resident. And she said, you have to come to my house and see what your Public Works Department just did. And I went, oh no, what did they do? And if you recall St. Clair Beach, you've got all that beautiful greenery on the south side. And it was kind of the pride and joy of Mayor Caddick when he was the mayor, and I'm sure Councillor Tony will appreciate that. Well, when I got there and I parked the vehicle on Dorset and where the new school is being built, and I just went, oh my God. It was like the Tasmanian devil went down the road and buzzsawed all the trees and all the beautiful blue spruces. This one was like 35 feet high, and it was cut into an L. And I went, oh my God. And so I called the manager at the time. What did you do? And he said, well, it's pretty hard to cut the grass and, with the tractor and that. I said, that's why we give you push mowers, And so anyway, he had about 3/4 of the trees just buzzed. And some of the beautiful ornament trees and that, like they were cut to the ground and so forth. And I said, okay, that's it. And then council said, oh no, we got to separate Public Works, put a proper Parks Department together and so forth. And then lo and behold, Mr. Anthony came on board, Casey Colehurst, we hired somebody now to take care of trees and so forth. And then things have been a little calmer, especially in the tree trimming business in the community. So I would say 13 years ago, Paul, you were a breath of fresh air that came into, onto the team. And most importantly, it's probably one of the toughest jobs because you're in, I mean, everybody has, intermingling with public, but the Parks Department, it's all of the associations and everybody's on you. They want more ice time. They want more pickleball time, they want more tennis time, they want, the courts are not right, this not done right. All the festivals we had and the issues you had to deal with, you know, and so forth. You handle that very well. And as a consummate professional, you represented our community and the general public with distinction, with integrity, with transparency. And, you know, the old saying, you know, for us is that we don't like surprises and make us look good. You made us look good every day. And so on behalf of all of us, we want to thank you for your service. We hope you don't, well, get some rest. Don't go too far away. I think there's an allocation in the budget for. No, I'm just saying, don't go away too far. We still have some major projects. But most importantly, the legacies that you're leaving here are going to be remembered, you know, for years to come and so forth. So on behalf of all of us, your peers that you work with, but most importantly, the citizens you served in this community, and then in Leamington, your prior years and so forth, we thank you. We thank you for your dedication, and we're a better community today than we were 13 years ago, but it's because of your professionalism and your delivery of service. So with that, we got a little thank you that we want to present you with. So want to just hand you this. Not an expensive trip. It's been a pleasure, Paul, you know, and all of us here are proud to say that you were our director and you did a hell of a job. I want to thank you. Maybe something for us. Okay. Community and recreation. Oh.
We just called you up for that presentation, Paul. So you're right down here. Communications.
No, don't go far. Okay, we got communications, right?
Yep.
Okay, good. All right, we've got two items, communications. If I could have a motion to receive. Councilor Houston, Councilor Higginson. Any, okay, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Anything in the communications that members of council want to highlight? Not okay. Committee minutes. Town of Tecumseh Business Improvement Area dated November 16th, 2022. Recommendation that the minutes of the town's BIA as duplicated and delivered to the members be accepted. Councillor Houston, Deputy Mayor Bichetti, any questions or comments on the minutes? None, all in favor? Opposed, that's carried. All right, reports. Chief Administrative Officer and People and Culture, the CAO, that's the report is 2022-10, exercise of delegated authority during the lame duck period.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In this report, I'm obligated to report out to council for the exercise of any delegated authorities during the lame duck period of council. I can report to you that I exercised the authority to make an expenditure greater than $50,000 that was beyond the approved 2022 budget. The additional expenditure of 2.4 million in capital was for the town's share of the County Road 42 and 43 road improvement project to be used for the construction of water mains and sanitary sewers. Due to the result of the county's tender, the total project costs escalated to 29 million from an 18.5 million estimated budget, and the town's share increased to a total of 6.4 million. So on the basis of that, in order to ensure that the project proceeded, I did exercise that delegated authority. This evening, I'm asking council to receive the report on the lame duck authority that was exercised, and to endorse the authorization of the additional capital funding in the amount of 2.4 million for the water main and sanitary sewer infrastructure within the town of Tecumseh associated with the County of Essex Road Improvement Project for County Road 42 and County Road 43. And further, to endorse the reserve allocations to facilitate the town's total project commitment of $6.4 million as follows: $3.359 million coming from the Water Main Reserve Fund and $3.1 million coming from the wastewater sewer reserve fund. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's my report to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On this report, as I mentioned during the presentation on the budget, we have done a follow-up into the WSCS Clerks Services Review report that was presented to council earlier in 2022. As part of those recommendations, there was an internal review undertaken of 5 non-statutory committees of the town. I will just go through them in the order in which they appear in the report. So the first committee looked at was the Lakeshore Tecumseh Intermunicipal Committee. And we understand that both municipalities are interested in continuing on with that committee into the next term. And therefore we will carry on until further direction from council to continue to administer that committee. The next committee addressed is the Rural Broadband Advisory Committee, and in consultation with the Director of Technology and Client Services and the co-chairs, Jobin and Houston, as well as Mayor McNamara, who all participate in that committee. There are some items for the committee to address in 2023, following which the committee is planned to conclude. So it's recommended that the Rural Broadband Advisory Committee be continued into 2023 with the same council representatives, and administration be authorized to approach the community members to extend their commitment into 2023 to complete that committee's work. With respect to the remaining committees, the Cultural and Arts Committee, the Seniors Advisory Committee, and the Youth Advisory Committee, that was where the lion's share of the work was in terms of reviewing the purpose of these committees. And it's concluded that these committees are actually not performing an advisory role. They've kind of grown in their community outreach and have become event providers and program providers directly into the community. The 3 key findings of our internal review was that there's a significant amount of staff time allocated to administering these committees, and especially in the event planning area. Secondly, some of the committees are struggling with attendance. Specifically, the Youth Advisory Committee cannot seem to achieve quorum on a regular basis, and therefore meetings have had to be canceled. And also it's found that even when there are events planned by that committee, there are concerns with the level of engagement of the committee members being able to support those events because of their other commitments through work, school, and extracurricular activities. So we're finding that the better venue for the students to complete their 40 hours of required volunteerism is through the school system, is through the town's already scheduled events and programs where they can participate on a voluntary basis. And finally, staff found that these advisory committees are mostly working outside of their scope, shifting focus away from an advisory role to council, and as I mentioned, being more of an event or service provider to the community. The consultant review that I mentioned earlier on recommended that this review be undertaken of the discretionary and advisory committees to determine if the terms of reference for each committee continue to be a priority and remain relevant. It is the finding of administration that these three committees, cultural, seniors, and youth, have evolved and are not operating within the scope of their original mandate, and that this is impacting operations in two fundamental ways. So the event and programming nature has expanded, and it is not in the right place in the organization. As recently our community and recreation services staff have demonstrated, they have the expertise and the in the programming activity area for the community. They're trained, they're experienced with these functions, they're budgeted for these functions. And the effect of the drift in the committee mandate has been to establish the secondary center of such activity in legislative and clerk services, which is not sensible for the organization and is costly in terms of staff time. Secondly, the dedication of a manager level resource in legislative and clerks services to a full spectrum event planner is inappropriate to the use of those resources, and consequently core services within the clerks department are not progressing, and that represents a risk to the organization. So as part of this review, we have recommended that the Senior Advisory Committee, the Youth Advisory Committee, and the Cultural and Arts Committee be discontinued effective this term of council. The budgets for these committees for 2023 budget be suspended, with some budgetary allocation shifted to community and rec services, and this is reflected in the proposed 2023 budget. We're also recommending that legislative and clerk services seek community partnerships with Workforce Windsor Essex or a local school board to take over the youth job fair event, and that the seniors and youth events programming remain fully centered in the community and recreation services department as where it belongs, and including seeking any funding support for events and programming for the senior level from the senior levels of government. With these changes, the manager of committee and community services role will shift to the core clerk's functions and support to the CAO, and be retitled as deputy clerk, clerk's services and policy advisor. That is my report to you this evening, and I seek your support for these recommendations, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you very much for the report. Any questions or comments? Okay, move. Okay, but okay, move the report. Do I have support? Councillor Houston, Councillor Higginson.
Thanks. I just I thank you very much for the report and the rationale. It certainly is sad to see these committees and for us to lose voice of these communities to council. I do understand that and trust that every effort has been made over the years to recenter these in their mandates. However, losing those voices is a blow. And so I'm wondering if there's been any talk about reimagining beyond the youth job fair that you mentioned, a way to reimagine opportunities for youth, for seniors, for the creative community to be able to advise on town progress. Is that through kind of reports, and we have a communication structure to be able to invite those voices to be part of those developments in town that they may have had the mandates been more tightly adhered to by the committees? Have we thought about reimagining those voices into our advice that we take?
Through the mayor to council, I think the town does provide a lot of opportunity for engagement. Through recently we acquired the platform Place Speak, and so we have done a fair bit of outreach through Place Speak to gain conversation with the community at large. I think that also the Community and Recreation Services Department does a very laudable job of involving community members in a lot of their event programming, and speaks to different segments of the population in terms of their need, whether that be, from youth, from 8 to 80, from youth to seniors, and reported to council in November on the expansion to the programming in that regard. So we're looking to see how that goes in terms of whether that's sufficient. But we did, to your point, try to return to the original mandates of the committees, but found that there isn't sufficient sort of bandwidth to keep a committee running all the time to advise council. There just isn't enough subject material, and that's where they get into doing other things because they feel compelled to, which is a little bit beyond their mandate. And as I mentioned, does play a bit of havoc within the organization in terms of trying to respond to their ideas. So what we're trying to do is kind of right the ship and repurpose the staff time according to how we need to implement our core business, and make sure that some of those other items that have been sadly lacking in attention move forward, because they must.
Go ahead.
Thanks for that. And I think as priorities shift, not only for the organization, but for those community members as well, perhaps a reimagining perhaps now is the right time to reimagine those. So while I'm sad to see them go, I'm kind of excited to see what comes in their place as far as their voice in the community. So I look forward to kind of next steps.
Okay, on the questions? No, it's all done. But thank you. We'll put that one in the bank. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you. All right, Madam Clerk, you've got the health safety policy, and that's with the people and culture.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. So the Occupational Health and Safety Act states that an employee shall prepare and review, an employer, sorry, shall prepare and review at least annually a written occupational health and safety policy and develop and maintain a program to implement that policy. Our own health and safety policy states that the corporation of the town of Tecumseh makes every effort to provide a healthy and safe work environment. All supervisors and workers must be dedicated to the objective of reducing the risk of injury and illness. And that as the employer, the corporation is ultimately responsible for the health and safety of all its workers. So there have been no recommended changes to the policy for 2022. It mirrors the one that was in place in 2021, and a copy of that health and safety policy is attached as Appendix 1. And therefore, it is being recommended that health and safety policy number 7, as reviewed for the year 2022, in accordance with section 25(2)J of the Occupational Health and Safety Act, be approved, and that health and safety policy number 7 be posted in all municipal buildings once it's signed off by the mayor and the CAO. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, questions, comments? Move the report. Deputy Mayor, thank you. And Councilor Dorner, on the motion, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay. All right. Community and Recreation Services. First one is the CRS 2022-14 Town of Tecumseh Energy Management Update. Mr. Anthony.
Thank you, Mayor McNamara, members of council. I do have with me this evening a couple of my managers, and I will ask them to come on live when their reports are in front of us. And if there's any technical questions, I can certainly turn to them. So Dan Walecki will help answer any questions at the end, technical wise. The first report this evening that we are presenting is the Energy Management Update. This report includes updates on the results and the progress in the implementation of the town's energy initiatives through the Energy Conservation and Demand Management, the ECDM plan. Recent acquisitions and developments in energy management efforts that have contributed to reduce energy demand and greenhouse gas GHG emissions. Next steps will recommend a series of actions, including seeking resources and partnerships to conduct a GHG reduction and energy management strategy, highlighting future initiatives and climate change considerations. The noted components within this report present the outcomes of the measures for conserving and reducing energy consumption for the town of Tecumseh that includes data with results achieved and provides proposed considerations and further town commitments. Available for any questions.
Well, the only comment I have is we're going in the right direction. As you can see over the years, our energy consumption has been reduced by a fair amount, you know, but we still have a ways to go, no doubt. But certainly with the onboarding of Mr. Wilecki, and I think that we're starting to see some real benefit in our GHG reduction. Yep, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to point out that and give a lot of credit to Mr. Wilecki for the big lift that he's done on this report. This has not been an easy undertaking where we know that we are well overdue to report out to council on this. I think he's done a bang up job and his team on this report. I look forward to the future initiatives that he's got articulated in that report, and particularly partnering with other community partners such as Essex Power Lines on moving forward with a bigger strategy so that we meet our goals, to the mayor's point, and then some. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a very good point. And something I remember a long time ago being on the energy task force at AMO. And when the whole issue of the CDMs and conservation was coming forward, I remember asking a question to actually to treasurers and others, and said, what are your energy costs? Like how much energy are you using in your communities? They couldn't give me an answer because everything was kind of departmental. It was all, you know, so much here, so much there, so much here, so much there. And I said, you need to aggregate the numbers and then let it and tell everyone, you know, how much of your operating budget is energy. And it was kind of shocking for a lot of folks because it was way up there as one of the high costs of managing your corporation. You can see here, even in the report, and that when you look at the numbers, you know, they're going in the right direction from 18 to 21. You know, from 816,000, you know, the price of energy has gone up dramatically since then. And here we are at 737 and 21. So you're right, Madam CAO, you know, Dan, you're doing a great job. And we you know, we sat here as politicians, basically declaring a climate emergency. And so I guess we gotta not only talk the talk, but we need to walk the walk. So thank you for that. No further questions, then a motion to receive the report. Councillor Higginson, Councillor Houston. On motion, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you.
Okay, we will now move into a series of 3 capital reports. I will put the preamble out for the first report. I won't repeat it for the second 2, and then we'll go through them as they go. So the purpose of this report is to present council for its formal adoption, the 2023 to 2027 Parks 5-year Capital Works Plan. The development plan for capital projects provides a detailed synopsis articulating prioritized renovations, asset replacement and repair, and new infrastructure developments. Outcomes of the SCM Strategic Priorities Workshop on March 29th, motion SCM 12-22 are also included in the capital works plans. The detailed capital project plan includes park infrastructure upgrades, renovations, and improvements planned for 2023 to 2027. Life cycle reserves, new infrastructure levy, the NIL, grants, and community contributions are used to fund replacement and repair, as well as any new priorities. The priorities are outlined, or excuse me, the projects are outlined in the report, as well as in the attachments 1, 2, and 3 for the parks. If there's any questions on any of the projects, and once again, I would like to thank Casey for authoring this report. We did pull these together fairly quickly to get them in front of council. As the Director of Finance alluded to earlier, we usually don't do this until after the budget, but we want to get them in front of council this evening so we can move on these projects. So we're open for any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Anthony. Questions or comments? Go ahead, Councillor Higginson.
Thanks very much. And thanks for this report. It was great to see all the great things that are going to be happening. And I bet you can't wait to kind of walk around and look at all those from your retirement spot. As excited as I am to see them from this spot too. And thank you very much. I did email you earlier about a question that I had on this. About crossover considerations about plans for lighting or other pieces of our parks. In particular, I used to live by Pequot Park, and a lot of the kids use that for optimal sledding when we get snow, which I'm hoping we do for the winter season. And I'm wondering if there's how we consider kind of lighting where there's insufficient lighting or where there's no lighting, and how we upgrade that to either add it to these plans or to consider things like energy conservation for solar lighting, et cetera.
So through the mayor to Councillor Higginson, yes, we've had plans in the works, some of the parks to look at solar lighting as we got through developing some of the amenities. Casey is online this evening, so we'll make note that to look at some of these parks that have amenities that could extend. Some of them we do have concerns where they're in neighborhoods and they become gathering spots as well. But when there's certain amenities like a small ski hill or something that can be used safely during some period of time, you still can control the lights. So we'll consider those for future adding to the list.
Thank you, Worship. Paul or Mr. Anthony, just a question on the expenditure forecast for Bellagio, the place set replacement. I know I always ask these questions when it comes to replacement because I have as a school principal, we looked at these playgrounds, and a few years ago they were told to get rid of them, liability, just the maintenance of the certification on these play sets. So my question regarding Bellagio, that's obviously a Strawberry subdivision, right? Correct? The park that's tucked in the back. As that place set is contemplated, was there any survey? And we talked about, communication with the neighborhood, because those are the kids that use it. It's the neighborhood, and sometimes it's a young neighborhood and there's gonna be toddlers and a certain place set, whether it be age 4 to 7 or 7 to 12, or are they mostly young teenagers that would like to see just a half-court basketball net versus a place set? And you put in a place set, it's not used. A lot of the kids don't use place sets anymore. Is there an opportunity where any communication was done? Or I just want to make sure that $70,000 is well used, and if there's nobody using it, but they'd rather use a basketball net, I'd like to see that maybe as an alternative.
So through the mayor to the deputy mayor, yes, we do have conversations. I can't tell you if we did have one directly with the residents for Bellagio. That price also includes not just the play equipment, but also turning it into a safer environment with the manufactured play chips. There's a fall height restrictions now through CSA restrictions. The basketball courts, yes, we have expanded. We're looking at refurbishing some of them. It's unfortunate that you can't put them in all parks because some of the parks are smaller, and that's what we look to in the master plan regional parks, so that there's an area where you can go to within your area of the park. So for Bellagio, there are some that are close by that they can utilize as well. So unfortunately, every park can't have all the same amenities, but we try to reach out to and the demographics change, obviously. Once it might have been a neighborhood with young children, and those children have grown either to young teenagers and moved on, and there isn't a lot of children left in the area, and then we would look at those replacements.
Go ahead, Councillor Houston.
Thank you, Worship, and to Mr. Anthony. It's great to see all of these plans, looking down the road and residents who have asked for certain things, seeing the replacements and seeing what will be going into their parks. The one question I have is I've had quite a few requests or just inquiries regarding Rushlow Park and a pathway possible in there, and I don't see it in our 5-year plan, but I'm just wondering about if we can take a look at that, because I did look, and Rushlow is a community, I forget the classification what it is, but it is within the classification where there is perimeter walkways, and then it does have a catwalk which goes back into Chernobyl, and just with the pathway that we have pending down Les Bronx, it will be a really good connection in the area. So if we can just take a look at it in our, and may possibly add it into the 5-year plan down the road. I have had quite a few requests inquiring about that. So.
Again, to Councillor Houston through the mayor. Yes, those investments in the trails do come from our trails life cycle. And up till a couple of years ago, our trails life cycle was a very lean reserve account. We've had working with finance and through the Parks and Rec master plan update, we have reallocated some additional dollars. We've built the funding back up. This year, or excuse me, in 2024, there's a large investment. No, excuse me, it's this year, a large investment in Southfield Park for a perimeter trail. And then we will build, and then I will have, again, Mr. Colthurst is, I'm looking up at him. We will put that on the list for future capital to work them in. If you note in the capital priorities list in 2024 to 2027, we've got a very aggressive 2023 to 2025. And then there's some opening for some additional projects. So I'm sure Mr. Colthurst will look at inserting something in for Rushlow.
I just want to add to Council Houston too, is that Rushlow Park 2 has a community mailbox set up with the gazebo area and that. And so if you look at the surrounding area from it, that would make a lot of sense to have a trail through the park, because they also have a kind of the natural area, at the far east part of the park and that. And so that would be, I think, a great point. Instead of people, I can't remember now. I don't believe there's a sidewalk there and so forth. So it'd be nice to have something at through the park to get to the community mail box itself. So I think it makes a lot of sense. Any further questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Antonio.
Just a comment. I just want to say to Paul, thank you. I'm very excited to see what happens in Southfield Park. And I know the residents in that area are going to be happy to see all the amenities that you brought to that area. I'm glad you listened, and I'm looking forward to the next 4 years there. I think it's going to be a beautiful park, and with all the new development on Tecumseh Road and all the, the high density area of that area. They need some park. They need some area to go out and relax and do their thing. So thank you very much and for doing that. I'm looking forward to it.
And thank you, Councillor Turner, again through the mayor's chair. It's certainly a team effort from our recreation and parks team. And that was an area that did need some attention. And certainly, I think your residents in that area would be quite happy.
All right, any further questions or comments? And motion to adopt the report. Councillor Antonio moves and supported Councillor Houston. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. All right, Mr. Anthony, now we go from parks to arena and pool.
Yes, so Mayor McNamara, again, members of council, CRS 2022-18, the arena pool, the 2023 to 2027 5-year capital works plan. Again, I'm not going to read the preamble that I did for the parks. It's good for all of them. The report and the Excel form attached shows all the projects that are listed and out through the outlying years. So again, if there's any questions on any of the projects, please bring them forward.
Move the report. Thank you. Deputy Mayor moves. Do I have support? Councillor Dorner. Any further questions or comments? None. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, municipal buildings, 23-27 5-year capital plan.
So once again, Mayor McNamara, members of council, this report outlines the outlying 5-year capital plans for the municipal buildings. One of the highlights certainly will be the CATA library renovations that will be undertaken next year. And we're excited about that. The plans, we just finished the play speak and the community consultation. So the plans are being developed now for those renovation projects in consultation with the library. And hopefully in the new year, shortly in the new year, that tender will go out. And by the end of the year, we're hoping that that project will be complete. There's some other smaller projects that are in the capital, the building's capital, but some exciting ones. And so if anybody has any questions, I'm open to respond to any of the questions from the building's capital report.
All right, questions or comments? Thank you for the rear entrance being finally done. That's kind of, I know it's only 40,000, but it's, it was kind of a pet peeve, you know, and, we got a beautiful building, but, it'll be a great addition, so. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Moved by Deputy Mayor, supported by Councillor Higginson. On the projects, all in favor, opposed if any, that is, carried. All
Okay.
right, this is an exciting one.
Yes.
The tender award, Bert Lacoste with ball diamond upgrades.
So I'll be a little bit longer in this one, but not long, I
Well,
promise.
you should be. That's your, one of your legacies, my friend.
Mayor McNamara, members of council, it certainly gives me great pleasure and it certainly puts a smile on my face to present to you my final report as your Director of Community and Recreation Services, which is the tender award for the Bert Lacoste ball diamond upgrades. The project consists of replacing the existing grandstand, backstop, fencing, complete renovation of the entrance plaza, and some site works. Through the town's purchasing bylaw, an RFP was developed and tendered for the work. At closing, 6 companies bid on the project, of which the full results are contained in the body of this report. I'm pleased to confirm the report or the project came in within the approved budget of 3.14 million. The report recommended the award of the project go to Gulf Developments in the amount of $2,996,218, inclusive of non-refundable HST. Certainly, this will be one of the last upgrades to the park. We do know through the capital priorities, there's a phase 2 to this, which would be the replacement of the turf, which is looking for upper levels of government funding in the future. So that project will be dependent on that. But I think as people around the baseball world know, when you mention Tecumseh, baseball comes to mind. And this park certainly has a legacy in this community. When people talk about, or anybody who's played ball, 2 of the ball diamonds in the county, the Maidstone diamond with the sunken dugouts, you thought you were in the major leagues, and the Lacoste ball diamond where you had the grandstands and you thought you were in the major leagues as well. So kudos to the Lacoste, the Tecumseh Thunder, the St. Clair College for participating in this, certainly bringing recognition to Tecumseh through all their regional, provincial and national championships. Looking to host, we just finished the Canadian championships for the baseball for St. Clair. They're all excited about coming back in the fall and hopefully will be done. And the Thunder is also very excited. They know it could be a disruption to the season. They may have to move some games during the construction time to get this done, but their goal is to have it for their 2024 Canadian championships. And that was one of the reasons that they were successful. So I'm open to any questions from council on this report.
A lot of history in that park, and you're absolutely correct. I mean, it's Tecumseh's known in the baseball world, and if you look at all the championships, you know, from the Green Giants prior to Thunder, I'll just give you a very short. A counselor from Etobicoke, a Toronto counselor, and I remember bumping into him, and he said, where are you from? You know, I said, I'm from Tecumseh. And he goes, I hate you guys. And I went, excuse me, he says, yeah, he said, you guys win the Ontario championships all the time. If you want to win the Ontario championships, you've got to go through Tecumseh. And he says, we can't beat you guys, you know, so, and so forth. But he did mention the park. He said, your park is outstanding. And so the excitement now with what this is going to become and the future opportunities on the turf fields and that is, this will be the premier park in Southwestern Ontario, or for that matter, in Ontario. So looking forward to this. And I know Jamie is absolutely ecstatic in terms of the 2024 championships coming here. And I think that was part of the winning bid is because of the investments that are being made to the park. And so great. This is great. And to come in under budget. Excellent. So thank you. Thank you for that. Bert would be very happy, and Donnie Fields would be, if he was alive today, he'd be here giving you a big hug for sure. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Councillor Higginson.
Thanks very much. I just wanted to echo how excited I am about this. I literally live a block and a half, and the energy that comes from that park out into the neighborhood is fascinating. When I moved there, it was the one thing that was sort of a beacon, especially during COVID, when you see those lights go on. And you kind of hear the roar from that ball diamond. It's great. It's also great to be a spectator there. And I know that that in 2024, when we welcome a bunch more people here, it's going to be such a source of pride as it is now. So I'm really excited about this one. I know our baseball players are really excited about it too, and I'm sure the surrounding kids that use that park and kind of look at it as a place that they want to go play. It's going to be really cool for them to watch it explode. So super excited about this one.
All right. Home run, grand slam. Go ahead.
Through you, your
Councillor
worship, to Mr. Anthony. I think the construction angels and tender gods, blessed you on this one, because
Yes.
we've seen how all of these projects have come in, and it would, I know it would break your heart if this one came in like $2.5 million over budget. So congratulations to you. I don't know if you put all the contractors in a headlock and, but congratulations. This is going to be it's a huge win for you, huge win for the town, huge win for all of us. So I just wanted to say thank you. So.
All right. Well, I'm sure we've got a mover and a supporter. Councillor Antonio, Councillor Higginson, on the motion, all in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Thank you. So no pressure, Mr. Bartnick and Russ. Development services, on-demand transit pilot. I believe Mr. Jeffries will bring that report forward.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since 2009, the Tecumseh Transit Service had operated as a fixed route service on a 1-hour schedule, covering 30 kilometers and 43 stops. The town manages the service, but it contracts the operation and maintenance of the 2 town-owned buses to First Student. In June of 2021, capitalizing on some funding opportunities provided through Canada Healthy Communities Initiative, Council approved a 1-year pilot project for an on-demand transit service. And just as a reminder, on-demand transit uses computer algorithms to generate routing in response to trip requests that are made either through a smartphone or through a call-in service. Through this program, it was anticipated that the on-demand approach to transit would result in improved reliability and transparency, shorter commute times, more flexible scheduling for the riders, and all this would contribute to an improved service that would increase ridership. It also enabled the town to add Amy Croft Drive in Lakeshore and the Tecumseh Town Center Plaza on the south side of County Road 222 as stops again that were previously eliminated to maintain that 1-hour scheduling that I earlier referred to. Blaze Transit was retained. They're an app development company specializing in on-demand. They were retained to develop the software and the app and to assist with marketing and managing the service. And then the commencement of the pilot project was delayed due in part to the pandemic and in part to difficulties with securing a call center. We eventually engaged Answer 365, a call center from out east, and the on-demand pilot project was initiated on March 28th of this year. So over the past 8 months, we've worked with Blaze Transit, Answer 365, and First Student to implement, manage, and operate the on-demand pilot project. One of the things that Blaze helped us with is through the engine that they developed was to provide metrics that enabled us to better understand and assess the system. And those metrics, at least the more relevant ones, are included in the report as figures, beginning with figure 1, which shows the trip request medium. And you can see here that about 3/4 of the ridership use the app, with the other quarter using the call-in service that Answer 365 provided. And this was pretty consistent throughout the pilot project. We thought that more and more riders would get used to the app and use it, but the people that were comfortable calling in continued to call in. They just took less time when they called in. And the cost associated with that eventually started to diminish because of the less time that they were taking. Figure 2 shows the passenger profile. You see that roughly 51% of the passengers were adults, 27% students, and 19% seniors. And when you compare that to the pre-pilot operation, seniors were 24%, adults 56%, and students were only 15.3%. And we think that the greater proportion of students that participated in the on-demand transit service was partly due to them being more comfortable with the technology and some reluctance on behalf of seniors to adapt to the on-demand technology. Figure 3 shows trip performance, and that indicates that 78% roughly of the trips were within 4 minutes of the time that the user was ultimately given. And the average trip, should note, took about 18 minutes, and that included the walk to the stop, the waiting for the bus, the ride, and the walk to the destination. And although we didn't have that metric for the previous fixed route, we believe this was an improvement upon the fixed route, because one of the complaints that we had with the fixed route was that people spent a long time on the bus getting to their destination. In figure 4, you'll see the monthly boardings. They range from 717 in July to roughly 1,000 in September, with an average of 914 monthly boardings. Now, to provide some context, between 2012 and 2019, with the previous fixed route prior to the pandemic, we had an average of roughly 2,200 to 2,400 riders per month. During the pandemic, we had roughly 1,200 per month in 2020 and 2021. So the ridership through this program was less than half of the pre-pandemic levels, which was a bit of a disappointment for us. Figure 5 and figure 6 show the departure times throughout the day. And the important part of this graphic is that you see a big spike around 8 o'clock during the Monday to Friday service. And that's because this is when most people were either going to school or to work. And this is where we experienced most of our problems, as there were competing ride requests generated from people who wanted to leave the mall in Windsor versus people who wanted to leave Tecumseh to go to the mall in Windsor. And because those couldn't be accommodated at the same time, rides were pushed. On Saturdays in figure 6, you'll see that it's not as pronounced, that spike, and we didn't have as much trouble accommodating ridership requests on that day. Figure 7 shows the route time breakdown. So it's the total time spent driving versus at pickup and drop-offs. And then in the red, which is the point I want to highlight here, that's the total waiting time at break locations, which was roughly 284 hours. So if the bus wasn't in demand or on demand and in service, it would go to a break location and it would shut itself off. And this resulted in 28% reduction in fuel usage and a related greenhouse gas emission reduction. So it was one of the successes of the on-demand transit pilot project. Attachments 1 and 2, if we can go to those, show ridership distribution. And you can see that the pink bus icon there shows that those are trips over 500. And the only one that gets that status is Tecumseh Mall, because the vast majority of the trips originated and ended at Tecumseh Mall. In fact, there were 3,000 originated there and 2,500 were used that as a destination. About 70% of the trips during the pilot project took place between Tecumseh Mall and destinations along the Tecumseh Road corridor, including the Zares, Food Basics, and Sobeys in Lakeshore, at the Manning and Tecumseh Road, Amy Croft Drive intersections. That was the highest demand. Like I said, about 70% of the trips took place in that area. Other popular destinations origins were the high density area along Tecumseh Road. We're at the west end of the town, Lesueur High School and the St. Clair Beach Retirement Facility. And we anticipate as growth and intensification continues along the Tecumseh Road Main Street corridor, we'll see that demand for transit and continue to rise there. Some of the least popular stops were on the east end of town, along Arlington and Riverside. And these are the sort of the lower density areas of the municipality. Renault and L'Esperance, Renault at L'Esperance and Bedell and Manning at Little River were also some lower demand areas. Going back to figure 8 in the report, you'll see there's a ridership rating. This was something that riders could do at the end of their trip. They had the option of providing a rating from 1 to 5. And not everyone took advantage of this, but you can see that those who did initially ranked it, around 3, and then it dropped, I think, because there was some confusion and there was some adaptation to the app and they're getting used to the system. So there's maybe some frustration that continued to increase to a more favorable rating. And we've included some of the more common quotes in an attachment 3. You can look at those at your own leisure. But the top comments are that the bus drivers are great, essentially. The bus didn't show up, was late, came early, and they missed it. The transit app keeps pushing the pickup time past the book time. Service is not reliable, and some had some negative call center experiences, but those were mostly early on in the pilot project. That started to improve as the pilot project went on. The cost of the project was roughly $10,700 net to the municipality. So it was well within the approved budget. And that was in part due to the funding through the Canada Healthy Communities Initiative and the Safe Restart Agreement funding. So just to quickly summarize the analysis, the biggest challenge with the on-demand program was that there were these competing trips, both to and from Tecumseh Mall. And because of that, trips were getting pushed and riders were either missing connecting bus or having long waits at Tecumseh Mall. We received many complaints of this nature. And we feel that it's because of this frustration that the riders left the system, some riders did, and ridership diminished. So we've looked at a number of options for 2023, and those options are contained in attachment 4. And they're geographically illustrated in maps 5A to 5F, but we'll focus on this attachment here, which is analysis of the various service delivery options. And they included option 1, which was maintain the on-demand as it currently exists, go back to the former fixed route, provide the on-demand service with 2 vehicles. So some communities are experimenting with 2 vehicles, and it's working well, although it's rather costly. Option 4 was a hybrid fixed route along Tecumseh Road in that area where the 70% of the ridership took its trips, and combining that with the on-demand with 2 vehicles in use at once. Option 5 was a fixed route along Tecumseh Road only, so that would exclude a lot of the areas of the northern settlement areas of the town. And then finally, option 6, which is the one that we're recommending, is going back to the former fixed route, Mondays to Fridays, and using the on-demand service for Saturdays. And the reason that we're recommending that option is because not only is at the lower end of the cost spectrum, it serves the existing ridership and may help restore ridership to pre-pandemic levels. It functions better on Saturdays under the lower, more evenly spread ridership. So there's no peaks on Saturdays like the rest of the week. And we didn't receive nearly as many complaints about ridership problems on Saturdays. There's less passenger and driver frustration associated with that option, less administration time and resources. There's marginally less fuel and lower GHG than the former fixed route over 6 days. And I guess importantly, it will enable an easier transition to the wider application of on-demand in the future if we decide that we want to increase the service to off-peak hours, such as on Sundays or during the evening. So this option will require the need for service delivery contract extensions for First Student, Blaze, and Answer 365 with whom we have excellent relationships with during this pilot project. That will ensure that the service continues uninterrupted into 2023. And it will also enable administration to continue to investigate different transit delivery models, including discussions with Lakeshore and Windsor for future consideration by council. We'd also like to take a closer look at optimizing the fixed route, because what the pilot project did for us was it revealed certain ridership patterns that need to be more closely looked at, including the popularity of the Sobeys grocery store in Lakeshore and Tecumseh Town Center on the southeast corner of Les Bronson and County Road 22, which I mentioned earlier had been removed in order to maintain a 1-hour headway. So we'd like to take a closer look at that. We feel there are ways to revise the route to accommodate those stops. And we'd like to assess that and report back to council in Q1 of 2023. So just to conclude, the pilot project has provided an opportunity to understand the benefits and the constraints to on-demand service by way of direct experience. Maintaining on-demand on Saturdays will enable us to, and our riders to continue to become accustomed to this technology and this format of service delivery. And it'll provide for future opportunities to expand and enhance transit service through the possible addition of evening hours and Sundays. So, Mr. Mayor and Council, the recommendations coming from this report are as follows: that it be received, the report be received, that the Tecumseh Transit Service reverts back to the pre-pilot project fixed route service Monday to Friday and continues to operate as an on-demand service for Saturdays, beginning January 2nd, 2023, at a net budget expenditure of $87,500 in advance of the 2023 budget deliberations due to the timing of the service renewal. And further, that administration be authorized to negotiate an amending agreement to the existing transit delivery maintenance services agreement between the town and First Student, which will facilitate an extension to the existing contract to the end of 2023. Which agreement will be brought forward for consideration by council under separate report at the January 24th, 2023 meeting. And finally, that administration be authorized to further assess potential changes to the fixed route in the first quarter of 2023, including public engagement, and that the findings be brought forward by way of a future report for council's consideration. Mr. Mayor, those are my comments. I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jeffrey. Any questions or comments? Go ahead, Councillor Higginson.
Thank you very much. I was really looking forward to this report. So I was pleased to see it come forward with all of its, there was a ton of information there and a lot of reflection on what our public is asking for. So I appreciate that very much. These are some of the most popular conversations that I had on the campaign trail about reliable and enhanced public transit. So forgive me if there's a few questions in here that I might not know. That we so you mentioned a further assessment to include reviewing some options. Are those inclusive of options for delivery of service and including any budget impact for Sundays?
To Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Higginson.
Go ahead, Mr. Jeffrey.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think everything is on the table over the next year. What we want to do is in reverting back to the fixed route, we want to bring some stability back to the service and some ridership confidence, and then explore not only within our own system, but through discussions with the budding municipalities, options for enhancing the service experience for our residents and people who use the bus from outside of our community. So yeah, Sundays would be something that we would look into.
Go ahead. Supplementary.
I appreciate that, and especially that consideration of entering into conversation with our budding municipalities. I'm wondering, how far along we are in some of those discussions with either Lakeshore or Transit Windsor. I know that Transit Windsor has had some success in its extensions to LaSalle and Amherstburg and even into Leamington. And I'm not quite sure how far along Lakeshore is in their considerations. And so I'm wondering if we have a timeline for next steps, if that's considered, it's going to be considered maybe after our consultations with our ridership and the wider community in this next year, and what we have, what we're looking at for re-engaging in those conversations with our budding community partners.
Go ahead.
I'm going to jump in here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to be clear on the answer to the last question, what's before you tonight for pre-budget approval does not involve Sunday service in 2023. So I just wanted to make sure that you were clear on that. With respect to negotiations with our abutting municipalities, as we alluded to in an earlier report, the intermunicipal committee will continue with Lakeshore, and that is a topic that has been the subject of that committee and will be again as we move forward and entertain that conversation through that venue. We have at a staff level in the past engaged with Transit Windsor, and we'll re-engage with them over the coming year. The purpose of the one-year extension to the current arrangement is to facilitate an opportunity for staff to re-engage in those conversations and then bring back some options for council's consideration.
And I think one of the things to remember too on that as well is that the ability at the end of the day, because of our ridership and grant applications to the province and being eligible for the provincial gas tax on transit. So we have to we have to be cognizant of that and what the total costs are going to be. And I think there's it's bigger than just, you know, one service, the other, and so forth. So there's a lot to digest, but we'll make sure that that information is coming forward in terms of the service, the cost, the gains, the losses, etc. I think are important piece, and I know that Councillor Houston's on that committee, and Councillor Jobin on that side, and to certainly bring that conversation there. But there is conversation on servicing.
Great. It's really exciting to kind of think about those, what we're kind of on the heels of, especially as we grow and considering what good public transit does for healthy communities and climate change and investments and all of those things. So I'm excited to see where it leads. And thanks very much for the engagement with On Demand, so that we can actually get this really great data that now we can build on. So thanks.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and if I could just add to that, I think one of our advantages is that we've now had the experience of operating a transit system for some 12 years. And it has been an evolutionary process. It has had engagement with Windsor Transit over the years. They have bid on proposals in the past. We know what they're capable of. But we also know now through our on-demand experiment, our pilot project, which, notwithstanding, as Mr. Jeffrey has very effectively demonstrated, had the opportunity to, I think, to provide some enhancements, but clearly there are we now understand better how on-demand has to work and what we have to invest into it. With the information that the various pieces of data have shown us is that we now better understand our ridership, notwithstanding it dropped. We do understand destinations much better. So I think we're really in a very good position to have these discussions. Having said that, we don't want to overcreate expectations. These are very complex issues. There's 2 other jurisdictions that we'll be speaking with, and trying to mesh, everyone's interests is challenging, but we are very much looking forward to it as well, because we think there's a great opportunity here.
Go ahead, Councillor Houston.
Yep, thank you, Your Worship. And to Mr. Jeffries, I think of this pilot project as sort of a success, because, we went out and we tried, and there's certainly no shame in trying, and I'm glad we tried. It's unfortunate that, on demand didn't work as All technology doesn't work great, but we certainly have some challenges, and happy to see, going back to something that we know works and gives a little more stability to the users. I think there's a lot of opportunity, coming in the next years with our growth, with I think there's a buzz of regional transit in the air, and what that ends up looking like. I think it'll certainly, it'll affect, our system and what it looks like. So I just want to pass my appreciation along to Chad, because he's been, Mr. Transit through this entire bit, and been quite involved. And I've had, conversations, with him, and so I certainly see your work, and it hasn't gone unnoticed. The one thing, and Councillor Higginson brings up, speaking with our partners, my one note here, and I think I always ask it every time we talk about transit, is can we re-engage with Windsor, right? Because I know that we take their transfers, but they do not accept ours. So just in those conversations that we have with them, if we can put that at the top of the list in those conversations, and I'm hoping new councils, new year, that it will lend to some fruitful conversations. So thank you.
All right, no further discussion. A motion then to adopt the recommendation that administration brought forward. Councillor Tonio, Councillor Higginson, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you. Okay. Townwide site plan control designated bylaw, Mr. Hillman.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll try and keep this very brief after that rather long discussion. So site plan control has applied throughout the town over since its existence. And in the report, we summarize that there have been some discrepancies in its application. And generally speaking, there were two bylaws that put into effect site plan control. One was bylaw 2003-82 that came about after the amalgamation. It made every development in the north end of the town, former Tecumseh and St. Clair Beach, subject to site plan control, commercial, industrial, institutional, higher density residential. But the gap was that it also recognized and it carried forward the status quo for the former Sandwich South area, which was it made some of the commercial industrial areas not subject to site plan control. So over time, as development was taking place, we were making land subject to site plan control on a site-by-site basis. And ultimately, last year, there was another bylaw passed. We saw the urgency in bringing in some conformity with the new official plan around mushroom operations, greenhouse operations, and cannabis greenhouse operations, which are in agricultural areas, but very much merited having site plan control applied to them. And it was consistent with the official plan. Since that time, it is appropriate to now fully implement the official plan, which establishes the entire town should be subject to site plan control by policy. But it does so in a way that it identifies the types of land uses that are intended to apply. And so what's being proposed this evening is that in order to bring the municipality into full conformity with the official plan, that a new site plan control bylaw be adopted that would be consistent with the town's official plan, including the passage of Bill 23, which would have the effect of making all residential developments in the town with greater than 10 units on a parcel of land subject to site plan control approval. That would bring it in conformity with Bill 23, which set the 10 unit limit. Commercial, industrial, recreational, institutional developments, excluding portable classrooms on a school site that was in existence on January 1, 2007, be subject to site plan control. That caveat is right out of the Planning Act. And all mushroom operations, greenhouse operations, and cannabis green operations would also be subject to site plan control. I would remind council that site plan control is now, the approval has been delegated to administration in accordance with changes to the Planning Act. And as a further reminder, site plan control is really the means by which we control detailed design on developments, its proper implementation, and its maintenance over time. So with that, Mr. Mayor, the recommendation is that the report be received, that a bylaw designating the entirety of Tecumseh as a site plan control area in accordance with section 41 of the Planning Act and subsection 10.4.1 of the Tecumseh OP, which relates to site plan control policies, be adopted. And further, that the former bylaws 2003-82 and 2021-21 be repealed. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hillman. Questions or comments? Recommendation?
Just a question, just with a reference to Bill 23, it's had third reading, but it hasn't. Oh, like.
Yeah, it's like a
reached
book
royal
with no
assent.
chapters in it.
So, I mean, just with the references here, is it preemptive at all? Because although it hasn't reached royal assent, I'm just.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, I will take the first stab at that. So the act is now, as I understood it, it had royal assent. And the act has now been amended. So when you go online, you can see it. Now, some of the regulations have not been put in place. This section of the act does not have any regulations associated with it. If in fact there were in some manner a change, we would certainly bring the bylaw back and make a necessary amendment. But we think it's timely and appropriate to do it.
Carried. Okay. Next one was dealt with. That was the capstone. Next one is financial services, the administrative fees and charges for 2023. Kind of a repeat.
So this is an annual report that's brought forward by administration to council seeking approval to adopt a bylaw to set administrative fees and charges for the next calendar year. So this is for the calendar year 2023. Generally, council has approved that back in 2006 that these rates should be reviewed and increased annually by the annual consumer price index. So for this go round, it is roughly 6.9%. So the report details that most fees would be increased by that rate, but it also details exceptions to that increase and for various purposes. So essentially, administration is seeking approval of this bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Kitsos. Move Council Houston, do I support? Council Tonio on the report, all in favor? Oppose, that is carried. All right, now we'll move on to legislative and clerk services, LCS 2022-37 civil marriage services.
Thank you, Your Worship. The following legislative and services and clerks department reports stem from the clerk service delivery review conducted earlier this year with a focus on the department core service as alluded to earlier this evening. The first report presented is with respect to our civil marriage services. As outlined in the report, civil marriage ceremonies are not regarded as core services of the department. The service review identified marriage ceremonies as a discretionary service with limited financial return to the town. Staff have reviewed the recommendations from the service review and indicated that the region has a well-established wedding industry with dedicated promotion of various marriage services providers, along with various wedding shows which promote officiant services. We are respectfully recommending that the report be received and that civil marriage services offered by the town be terminated effective December 31st, 2022. And further, that the acting clerk prepare a bylaw to amend bylaw 2018-09 with the respective revisions to terminate marriage ceremony services and the agreements with the town's officiants. And furthermore, that the acting clerk prepare correspondence to all town officiants terminating their agreements and a notice be posted on the town's website. Thank you.
Okay. Council's pleasure. Move Deputy Mayor, supported Council Tonio. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Next is the Animal Control Services, LCS 2022-39.
Thank you, Your Worship. The town has contracted animal control services since 1999. The current agreement is set to expire on December 31st of this year, and the animal control officer will be retiring. In accordance with the town's purchasing policy, we sought an RFP, request for proposal, seeking animal control services on the town's website on November 10th, as well as posted to the town's bid and tenders account. Following the close of submission, one submission was received from Essex County Canine Services. Essex County Canine Services has been operating for over a decade in Essex County with a complement of highly trained staff who adhere to strict operating animal handling and impounding and public interaction policies and procedures. Based on experience, qualifications, rapport, and evidence quality of service within Essex County, administration recommends entering into an agreement for animal control services with Essex County Canine Services. This agreement would be for a 3-year term commencing in 2023 and concluding in 2025. Funding for the annual fee of $22,000 plus HST for the proposed animal control services has been allocated in the draft 2023 animal control budget. Council's advanced approval of this budget allocation is required due to the timing of this service renewal. We are asking for the report to be received and that the tender from Essex County Canine Services in the amount of $22,000 plus HSD be approved, and further that bylaw 2022-92 be given first, second, third, and final reading to authorize the mayor and acting clerk to execute an agreement satisfactory and form to the town solicitor between the town of Tecumseh and Essex County Canine Services regarding animal control services from January 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2025. Thank you.
All right, moved by, well, questions or comments? None. Moved by Councilor Tonio and Councilor Houston, support. All question? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Taxi licensing services, LCS 2022-40. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, this report is another recommendation stemming from the clerk's service delivery review, which examined taxi licensing and the level of staff support by the clerk's department to offer this service. The issue of taxi licenses is a discretionary business licensing activity for municipalities, and not all area municipalities offer this service, including the town of LaSalle, which deregulated taxi service in 2017 with no residential complaints. The review highlighted that the industry has faced significant challenges through the decline in business throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, along with the emergence of other ride-sharing platforms such as Uber and Lyft that have gained popularity for their on-demand convenience and the ability to negotiate lower fare prices. The review also outlined the level of staff administration to offer this service. At the time of renewal for licenses, staff expressed frustration with the parties when it comes to meeting the license requirements. The review concluded that the level of effort by staff, coupled with the lack of cooperation from the industry in complying with licensing requirements, is not time well spent and is not a high priority service in today's market. This market for this service has more options available today than it did when the first service was first implemented in the town in 2003. The increase in servicing options is reflective of the needs of our residents. We are respectfully asking for the report to be received and that council repeal bylaw 2003-85, thereby deregulating taxi cabs, taxi cab drivers, and taxi cab companies within the town of Tecumseh. And furthermore, that any taxi cab driver who holds a valid municipal taxi driver's license within the city of Windsor or the county of Essex be permitted to service the residents of the town of Tecumseh. Thank you.
Pleasure, council. Questions or comments? Go ahead.
Thanks for this. I know that it's that we're asking that they be permitted to service the residents. Do we anticipate any negative impact either for users of taxi cabs, either on cost, availability, timing, any of those things, whether since we're just allowing them to be permitted, but we're kind of eliminating the possibility of them coming from in town. Is there any, do we anticipate that there will be a negative impact on users of taxi cabs in significant ways?
Through your worship to council, we do not, again, as noted earlier, the town of LaSalle did regulate a few years back and they have not, in their experience, had that negative decline. Also likely a lot of residents are probably already using other ride sharing opportunities that are out there and engaging in those services. So it's not anticipated.
We had a limited amount of cabs that were regulated or licensed here, and others from Windsor couldn't come in and that. And then some of the complaints that we were getting as well is that a lot of the parties, especially at Christmas time and so forth, the difficulty to be able to hire a cab. That was always certainly an issue, but now they have certainly more options. They'll be able to, you know, call a cab and Uber service as well, and other opportunities to, especially at this time of the year. You know, those who are out and certainly don't want to be stopped in the right program. You want to make sure you got service to get you home and so forth. The only question that I would have though on that is, if there is an outside cab that comes into the community and there's a complaint, something happens, who do they call? You know, the license Windsor, who do they complain to?
Through your worship, yeah, correct. So if it is, so for example, a taxi cab company that is licensed through the city of Windsor, they would be contacting that taxi cab company directly and or the municipality that is licensed. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions or comments? I have a motion, recommendation. Yes, Councilor Houston, Councilor Dorner. On the motion, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Also, our legislative clerk services, 2022-42, the animal services. This is kind of the motherhood and apple pie with Windsor and the Essex County Humane Society. Go ahead.
Thank you, your worship. As council is aware, for a number of years, the town has been providing cat programs to help alleviate the cat overpopulation in Tecumseh through the cat intake and the cat spay and neuter voucher program. The town's dog tag licensing program requires every dog owner to make application annually to obtain a dog license. The program is protective to offset the costs associated with regulating and controlling dogs running at large, providing a dog catcher, and maintaining the dog pound. As well, the clerk service delivery review examined the town's animal licensing programs and found a significant amount of staff time is spent managing and issuing dog licenses and the cat spay and neuter voucher program and cat intake program, impacting staff's time to focus on core department services. Many municipalities are now outsourcing their licensing programs very successfully, and they're seeing increased uptake in revenues. In line with the review's recommendations, administration has engaged with the Windsor-Essex County Humane Society for a partnership opportunity to offer both the cat programs on the town's behalf at an annual cost to the town of $7,500. This partnership would provide the same level of service to Tecumseh residents while alleviating the level of staff time for administrative support of both programs. The clerk's review also recommended outsourcing dog licensing service to an external provider to alleviate the staff burden and increase revenues. By way of an update, administration is currently engaging the services of DocuPet Inc. to provide dog licensing starting in 2023 at a cost of $4 per dog tag sold, plus applicable credit card transaction fees. Entering into an agreement before the end of this year will secure this current standard fee of $4 per tag. DocuPet has a secure online software program which allows residents to follow an easy step-by-step process to purchase or renew their dog tags. Each dog tag is linked to that pet's secure online profile, which includes a unique identification number to help reunite a lost dog. DocuPet software also provides for 365 licensing, which allows the resident to renew based on the date of the calendar. So for example, if a resident were to renew on February 1st of 2023, they would then renew again February 1st of 2024. Detailed communications will be forthcoming as administration anticipates launching the dog tag licensing program with DocuPet in the spring of 2023. The following motion is recommended: that the report entitled Animal Services be received, and that the corporation of the town of Tecumseh enter an agreement with the Windsor-Essex County Humane Society for the provision of cat intake and spay and neuter services at an annual cost to the town of $7,500, and DocuPet Inc. for the provision of dog tag licensing at an annual cost to the town of $4 per tag in advance of the 2023 budget deliberations due to the timing of the service renewal. And further, that the clerk be authorized to execute an agreement between the town and Windsor-Essex County Humane Society for a one-year term commencing January 1st, 2023 and concluding December 31st, 2023. And furthermore, that the clerk be authorized to execute an agreement between the town and DocuPet Inc. for a 3-year term commencing January 1st, 2023 and concluding December 31st, 2025. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yep, go ahead.
Through you, is this voluntary or something we enforce, or we hope everybody signs their animals up, their dogs up?
So this would offset, instead of the town doing the online dog tag programming, the DocuPet company would then take over that service for us. So they would have our existing database that has the current number of dog tag owners in the municipality. They would communicate with those dog tag owners to renew their dog tag on an annual basis, as well as they do have the community outreach to be able to extend to notify or make the program aware to residents that are moving into the municipality or have recently acquired a dog to then purchase a tag. So it will hopefully help to increase our revenues and increase the amount of dog tags that are within the municipality. Thank you.
Yeah. Any further questions or comments? Go ahead, Councilor Houston.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just on the DocuPet website and it looks pretty slick. I didn't see any of our neighboring municipalities on it, so it just might be something that we can share with them that, hey, we've done this because it looks nice to me. So looking forward to seeing this come through, and we'll get Max all signed up with a new tag.
We'll make him a poster child,
Yeah.
a poster dog. All right, any further questions or comments? Council's pleasure. Move, Councilor Houston, support, Councilor Higginson. On the report, all in favor, oppose, that is carried. Thank you. Okay. Moving right along, Public Works and Engineering Services, the amendment to drainage assessment schedules for works completed under Section 78 Drainage Act in 2021. Mr. Bartnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Council again. So this report before you identifies those Section 78 reports that were constructed in 2021 and now require amendments to the drainage assessment schedules. Section 62(1) of the Drainage Act requires a municipality to adopt a bylaw to assess out the actual cost of the drainage works proportionately to the affected landowners. There are 4 drains where the works were carried out in 2021 under Section 78. Sue or Christina, if you could just turn to page 4 of the report. So these reports include the Dawson Drain for the Revenberg Culvert, which was assessed 100% to the landowner. The South Talbot Holden Outlet Branch Drain for the County of Essex, which was part and parcel of the Walker South Talbot Road roundabout, and the county was assessed 100% of those costs. The South Talbot Holden Outlet Drain, the Gosselin O'Neill Culvert, where the landowner paid 7% of those costs for the actual culvert. The town paid 93% of those costs, and those works were associated with the South Talbot Road reconstruction projects from a number of years ago. And the East Town Line Drain, St. Clair Outlet, where the landowners were assessed 55% of those costs, and the other 45% were assessed back to the town and the county. With respect to the recommendations, it is recommended that the report be received this evening, and that bylaw 2022-093, being a capital drain levy bylaw for the Dawson Drain, be given for a second, third, and final reading, And that bylaw 2022-94 for the South Talbot Holden Outlet Drain be given first, second, and third final reading. And furthermore, that bylaw 2022-95 for the South Talbot Holden Outlet Drain for the Gosselin O'Neill Culvert be given first, second, and third final reading. And furthermore, that bylaw 2022-96 related to the East Town Line Drain, St. Clair Outlet be given first, second, third, and final reading this evening. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Bartnick. Any questions or comments on the reports? If not, fair to move. Deputy Mayor Getty and Councillor Houston. All in favor? Oppose? Carried. Water and wastewater rates for 2023.
Thank you, Your Worship. Before I begin, I just wanted to thank Tom Kitsos and the Financial Department for assisting in preparing this report this evening. It's kind of a joint venture where Public Works drafts a report and Financial Services does the heavy lifting behind the scenes. The report before you does have a recommendation that bylaw 2022-102 being a bylaw to adopt the water and wastewater rates for 2023 based on the recommendation of the 2015 water and wastewater rate study and the mediation agreement and discussions within the Windsor Utilities Commission be adopted. So the town does complete water and wastewater rate studies to update the water and wastewater charges to ensure full cost recovery of these services. These services include operations, capital works, and the appropriate reserve contributions necessary for asset lifecycle replacement, as well as growth. Water and wastewater rates increases are reviewed by council on an annual basis and typically occur in conjunction with the town's annual budget process. The water rates for 2023 are recommended to be raised by 2%. That would be a change of about 2.5 cents per cubic meter. The wastewater rates for 2023 are also being recommended for an increase of 2%, which would be a change of about 2.6 cents per cubic meter. The fixed charge rates were increased by 6% over last year's totals or last year's levels. But ultimately, what does that mean? So the impact of water and wastewater rate increases would increase the cost to a homeowner using on average 240 cubic meters annually from $1,044 to $1,081. So that would be an increase of 3.6%. Or the equivalent of just under $38 per year. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or I could drag Mr. Kitsos up here as well to help me.
Any questions or comments? Thank you. Move the report. Councillor Houston, do I have support? Councillor Dorner. On the report, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Public Works, Lesperos Road via rail crossing improvements, tender award via rail agreements. Waiting and waiting,
Yeah.
and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting.
Thank you, Your Worship. As council may recall, so we did have a tender call number 1 that went out earlier this year in April of 2022. We only had 1 bid that was submitted during that time. That bid was significantly over budget. And if accepted at that time, the total budget would have been about 5.2 million. So that was as a result of a combination of time of work, the influx of other projects, large projects within the area, including Provincial Road in the city of Windsor, as well as County Road 42 and 43. Concerns working around via rail. And so these were some of the issues that were raised by contractors at that time. And at that time, council did reject the single source tender. So we did proceed forward with a second tender call, which closed November 17th of this year. We did receive 5 bids. They did range between just under $3 million to about $5 million. The low tenderer was Rudak Excavating Incorporated with a bid of 2.96 million. So financial implications, we did have an original budget of just over 2.1 million. The total project costs, when you add in the construction tender, the engineering, and some of the via rail requirements, is now projected at 4.27 million. So a lot of the increases are attributable to scope changes, inflation that we're seeing, and not necessarily CPI increases of 5 to 7%. In the construction industry, sometimes they hold the costs of certain materials for a number of years, and then sometimes you see a drastic increase in certain materials. So it's not abnormal to see 100, 200, 300% on certain materials, especially in today's market. The scope, the via rail works and the retendering obviously had some additional costs as well. So just wanted to remind council that we did receive a grant through the Rail Safety Improvement Program. And Christine, if we can turn to page 7 of the report. So on page 7, you'll see a summary that identifies what the impacts are to the life cycle. So we did receive a grant, 80% of eligible costs up to about $1,027,000. We've also had additional conversations with the Rail Safety Improvement Program staff, and they've indicated opportunities to increase the grant up to 20%. And that seems to be the easy route. They did say that if we did want to ask for additional money, that it would follow kind of a formal process. So we will be exploring those opportunities as well, especially now that we have some actual tendered costs to go back to them with. Included in this report, so on the table in front of you, so you can see the tendered and the projected costs, as well as the original RSIP funding and the additional 20%, and then the impacts to each of the life cycle reserves. So although the total project budget is projected at about 4.27 million, the actual impacts to the reserves are just slightly over 3 million. In addition to the tender, there are 3 via rail agreements that we brought forward as well, and we brought bylaws on the agenda as well. Those relate to the collaborative work agreement, the infrastructure contract, and the fencing agreement. And your worship, if I could just perhaps go through the recommendations for you. So it is recommended that the tender for the Les Bretons Road via rail crossing improvement in the amount of $2,961,219.48, excluding HST, be awarded to Rudak Excavating Incorporated, and that bylaw 2022-90 be given first, second, and third final reading to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute an agreement satisfactory in form to the town solicitor with Rudak Excavating Incorporated. And further, that funding allocations reflecting a total budget requirement $4,271,200 with a $2,139,000 increase to the original allocation be accommodated as follows. And there's a number of bullets there that show the increase to those individual reserve funds. And furthermore, that bylaw 2022-91 be given first, second, and third final reading to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the collaborative work agreement with Via Rail. And further, that bylaw 2022-97 be given first, second, and third final reading to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the infrastructure contract, crossing and permission to access form with Via Rail Incorporated, and that bylaw 2022-98 be given first, second, third final reading to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the fencing agreement with Via Rail Incorporated. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? this is the beginning of finally getting some streetscaping in the core area. So glad to see that we had at least five bidders this time, and as much as we had to deal with inflation, it's not at the level that I thought it might be coming in. So let's get the project on the ground. Move, Deputy Mayor. Support. Yep.
Thank you, Your
Go ahead.
Worship, and through you to Mr. Bartnick. And to follow up on your comment of the streetscape, certainly looking forward to it. The BIA had expressed interest at some point, right, to be involved in, the streetscape piece. So I'll circle back with you and kind of pick your brain on how you think that the BIA could be involved, because there's interest there. So thankful that the tender came in $1 million less than what it was before. So happy to support and see us get the show on the road.
Thank you. On the motion, any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, opposed if any, that is carried. Thank you. Okay. Okay, supply and various vehicles tender.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Before we begin this evening, I wanted to let council know that we do have our Manager of Public Works and Transportation with us, Mr. McCardle, and he's here to help out with any questions that you guys might have.
Well, my thing, I know it's Amherstburg, that's local.
Yeah.
And
this is a good one.
That's a good one.
We'll get to the other one.
Yeah, and I'm waiting because that's the next one.
Yeah.
Is I think Oxford is a little out of town.
Yeah. So in summary of this report, so in 2021, council approved $111,000 for 3 extended cab pickup trucks with the outfitting. These vehicles were tendered and awarded back in March of 2021. But prior to the vehicles being delivered to the town this January, the vendor requested an additional $30,000 to finalize the purchase. So this request was reviewed internally and rejected, and the vehicles were then retendered in 2022. So earlier in this year, in 2022, council also approved $40,000 for a crew cab pickup truck with the outfitting as well. So we did go out for a request for tenders, closed November 10th, and with 5 submissions. We did post on the town's bids and tenders platform. And in addition to this, we did send an email to local dealerships advising them of the town's tender and on the bids and tenders platform itself. Costs were significantly higher than the allocated budget. This is due to supply chain issues related to COVID-19, availability of microchips, the cost of raw materials, inflation, as well as government discounts are no longer available for municipal fleets. And these discounts would range anywhere between $3,000 and $10,000 per vehicle. So it is recommended, so the recommendations of this report that the purchase of the 3 extended cab pickup trucks in the amount of $128,468 plus HST plus outfitting costs be awarded to Provincial Chrysler, and that the purchase of 1 crew cab pickup truck in the amount of $57,883 plus HST plus outfitting costs be awarded to Amherstburg Chevrolet. And further, that the annual funding allocation reflecting a total budget requirement of $201,843 with a $50,843 increase to the original allocation be accommodated through the fleet life cycle reserve. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Like I mentioned before, Mr. McCardle is on as well virtually.
Questions or comments? They're local. Hopefully they come with four tires. No, I think it's, go ahead. Moved by Councillor Houston. Thank you. Do I have support? Councillor Higginson. On the report, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Now the next one.
Thank you, your worship. Before we start this one, let's all remember the last one. So in March of 2022, council approved $90,000 for the water service vehicle and service body with outfitting. A request for tenders closed on November 17th with only 2 submissions. This was posted on the town's bid and tenders platform. And in addition, there was an email sent to all the local dealerships advising them of the town's tender that was posted on the bids and tenders platform. Again, costs were significantly higher than the allocated budget related to supply chain issues, availability of microchips, cost of raw materials, inflation and government discounts, but also because this vehicle has a specialty service body that's manufactured for it. This was greatly affected by the raw materials and the increase in steel that we've been seeing. So the recommendations with this report is that the purchase of the 2022 water services vehicle and service body in the amount of $109,399 be awarded to Oxford Dodge, and that the annual funding allocation reflecting a total budget requirement of $114,377 with a $24,377 increase to the original allocation be accommodated through the fleet life cycle reserve.
Just a question, this is the cabin chassis and then they got to fit it with the box?
Yes. Yeah, it's I think you've seen the
water one.
The water ones, yes.
Okay. Go ahead, move, report. Begrudgingly because it's not next to home and supported by Councillor Tonio. No further questions or comments. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Yeah, I'm always one to say charity starts at home. Okay, I think we are in bylaws.
Thank you, your worship. We have bylaw 89, the tender award for the Curtis Drain reported on earlier this evening. Bylaw 90, tender award for Les Bronze via rail improvements. Bylaw 91, Les Bronze Road via rail agreement. Bylaw 92, animal control services. Bylaw 93, Dawson Drain, Rivenburg Drain. Bylaw 94, South Talbot Holden Outlet Drain, County Road 11 and South Talbot Road intersection. Bylaw 95, South Talbot Holden Outlet Drain, Gosselin O'Neill Culvert. Bylaw 96, East Town Line Drain, St. Clair Outlet. Bylaw 97, via infrastructure contract, crossing and permission to access. Bylaw 98, via infrastructure contract, fencing. Bylaw 99, administrative fees and charges for 2023. Bylaw 100, interim tax rate. Bylaw 101, late payment charges. Bylaw 102, water and wastewater rates. Bylaw 103, townwide site plan control bylaw. And finally, bylaw 104, Golf Developments, Inc. We are respectfully asking for first and second reading, and if appropriate, third and final. Thank you.
All right, 3 readings, 2 readings. Councillor Houston, Councillor Tonio on 2 readings. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, 3 readings now in order. Councillor Houston and Councillor Higginson. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. Unfinished business. New business. Yes. I'd like to call on our director, Paul, for final comments.
Thank you, Mayor McNamara, members of council. I'll be quick and I'll try to get through this. I'd first like to thank council, both present and past, for allowing me the opportunity to serve as your Director of Community and Recreation Services for the past 13 years. It seems like yesterday I sat in these council chambers for the first time, and I can say that I believe as a team, we've accomplished a lot for our residents. I wanted to highlight just a few quick major projects that as a team, I'm very proud that we've delivered to to the town of Tecumseh. We successfully bid and brought in the Car Hub World Cup, the World Under 17 Championships, and we served as a part host of the Memorial Cup. We hosted the referees and the Quebec League team. Lakewood Park development, both north and south, including the upcoming developments of a splash pad and outdoor washrooms. I think the community has really gotten use of that park. Old Castle Heritage Park and historical building. Upgrades to Weston and St. Mary's Parks, including the community's first splash pad at St. Mary's Park. Upgrade to McCullough Park, the lit ball diamonds, storage shed, renovated washrooms, facilities, splash pad, accessible playground, and most recently the addition of the surfacing of the playground equipment. Lacasse Ballpark upgrades, the ball diamond upgrades, field lighting, grandstands, and the pickleball court, which has been a big hit to the community. The skate park at Town Center and the arena upgrades to rink. The Community and Recreation Capital Plan, which was presented tonight with a lot of enhancements to recreation facilities throughout the community and all the wards. I would also like to take this time to thank our CAO, Mark Evans, our former CAO, Tony Haddad, for believing in me and supporting me whenever required. Our SMT, again, both present and past members, we did a lot together and have laid the groundwork for great things to come for this community. To all staff in the town, I will miss coming to work and seeing you on a daily basis. I couldn't go without saying to Sue, thank you. You'll miss the phone calls throughout the day with help. I need help. To all the community groups, organizations, user groups, residents, thank you for all your vision and support you have provided myself and our Parks and Recreation team, who I have left for last. I can't say enough about our team and what they do for this community. From our management team of Casey, Brett, Dan, and formerly Carrie Rice, to our program and events leaders, Katie and Katerina, and our fantastic support team, Shannon, Alex, Candace, Mara, and Karen Solani, who is also retired. To our maintenance lead, Dan DeRoche, our park staff, my arena staff, and all the students who are employed seasonally, a great team for sure. In closing, I can't say enough of how proud I've been to serve this great community. Thank you and good night.
All right, with that, thank you. And I think it's been said earlier on when you came up front, but again, we wish you all the best, all the health, and enjoy, get some rest. And I'm sure that we're not going to be strangers. And as we all, whether you're still an active employee or retiree, it's still family. So wish you all the best, you and Peg, your family. Enjoy your time. Okay. Next is the have a motion for 22-24 AMO Board of Directors. I've had a few phone calls from Toronto and so forth. And as you know, I served as the president on a couple of occasions. And so I'm asking for the indulgence of council to help support my application. I've been asked to apply for the municipal elected official position on the county caucus AMO Board of Directors, and that a completed application and supporting material be submitted no later than the 12 p.m. noon Friday, February 10th, 2023. Not going to be a big cost to the municipality. The meetings are all Zoom, and except for the June meeting, which is the convention in that area. I do believe I bring value, and I have brought value. The opportunity to meet with elected officials and bureaucrats in the area to continue to build the interest and the opportunity. As you know, we got a lot of projects coming, and so it's an opportunity to bring obviously the interests of our community and our region. I'm looking for a mover and a seconder on that. Moved by Councillor Higginson, supported by Councillor Tonio. Any questions or comments? Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm happy to support. The question I have is when we go to AMO and we vote in small urban caucus, right? That's our area as Tecumseh. What, we don't vote, like, can you just, like the county caucus, what is that?
You can vote for any division you want. We are part of the county, as you know. We have a large rural component to the area, so we add, so really there's 3 caucuses that you can really look at. Rural, which we do have a rural component, which is Roma, small urban, and county. Those are 3 that we're all part of.
And I thought we were only a part of small urban, because those are the ones that we always get called to, right? And
When you make your app, you know, if you're going to AMO, and especially in election year, you can register as a county representative. You don't necessarily have to be a small urban, you know, to help support whoever the candidate that you want to support. You have to do that prior to July 16th or something like that. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I support this motion. I know our mayor's been on the AMO Board of Directors in the past. Past president brought a lot of, they know Tecumseh. When you walk around at the conference there, they know where we're from, and that's, years of serving on the board. I'm just wondering if there's any cost, Gary, is the county able to foot the bill if we need to ask, or?
No, that'll be our responsibility.
Okay.
And as I was a county caucus representative before,
Yeah.
I guess the special interest for me is bring interest for the town of Tecumseh.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know if was it moved or supported or?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, on that. Well, thank you, certainly members of council, and again, an opportunity for us to continue to knock on doors. Very important to bring the bacon home, so to speak, as we can. So I want to thank you for that, and I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you very much. And so with that, members of council, any further new business? Okay, before I ask for a conformatory bylaw, this is our last meeting of the year. As we know, we're approaching Christmas. And to all of my colleagues around the table and certainly senior management team and all of our members within the Tecumseh family, I want to wish you all of the best on behalf of Heather, my wife, my family. May you have a blessed Christmas, get some rest, and you know what? Look around you when you're at home and give your kids or your special someone an extra hug. And in particular, we've come through some pretty challenging times, and but many in our community, even as well as our community is, there were many that are not as fortunate as others. And so, pay attention to your neighbors and others. Be kind to each other. And I wish you all the best. Leading into the Christmas season, enjoy it, especially the little ones. Christmas is extremely special. I'm very excited to see my 6-year-old again, 2-year-old, especially the 6-year-old who believes that Christmas is the guy in the red suit with the white beard, and brings all kinds of good stuff. So enjoy yourselves, enjoy your family, give them all a hug. And until, we meet again, our next meeting in the new year, all the best. Confirmatory bylaw, 3 readings to confirm the proceedings of this meeting. Councillor Tonio, Councillor Dorner, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. And with that in mind, we do have adjournment is now called for. Councillor Houston and Councillor Higginson. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. I know it's been a long meeting, and hopefully in the new year, our senior management team will be kind to us. This meeting is now adjourned.
That's right.
Get out of here. They had something else in the agenda.